2 minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. Forty-five seconds remaining. Thirty seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
To infinity and beyond.
He's live. He's nationwide. This is the Zach Gelb Show. Here's your host, Zach Gelb.
Live from the place where you're not overly ostentatious studios of the Infinity Sports Network here in beautiful New York City, sitting on top of the 10th floor of 345 Hudson Street. Welcome on in to what is another week and a Monday edition of the Zach Gelb Show across all the great local Infinity Sports Network affiliates, Sirius XM, Channel 158, the free Odyssey app, and of course always streaming live on YouTube. 855-212-4227 is the number to jump on in. That's 855-212-4227. You could always get at me on Instagram, where I'm straight flexing, or via the good old cesspool of Twitter X at Zach Gelb. That's ZACHGELB. And we'll be rocking and rolling all the way up until 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific time. Let's start the show with some panic. For the Cincinnati Bengals, the panic is a 10 out of 10. For the San Francisco 49ers, I don't like what I'm seeing, but I think they will find a way because of the product of a lot of sloppy play in the NFL, in both conferences, the AFC and the NFC, to still be one of the better teams at the end of the season. But I said this going into the weekend, and I will say it again. I'm sick and tired of people giving the Cincinnati Bengals the benefit of the doubt. You need to eventually display and showcase what you could do on a football field. And I know we've gotten into this rhythm and we're accustomed with the Bengals of, hey, they're 0-2 to start the season, or they're 1-2, they'll figure it out. They were at a point going into yesterday where they were 1-3 heading into that game up against the Baltimore Ravens. They simply had to win that game against the Ravens. Because if they would have won that game up against the Ravens, they improved to 2-3, and even with some of their horrible rancid play this season, it would start to turn their season around. Because we all know the Bengals have talent. Joe Burrow is one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. When they are motivated, Jamar Chase and T. Higgins are a sensational 1-2 punch. And this has been a team that has been the only team in the Mahomes era ever since Tom Brady has walked out of the league to find a way to take down the Chiefs when it matters the most. But when I look at Cincinnati, the biggest problem I have right now with them is really two things. One, they have played with fire, and they keep on putting their hand on the stove. And you know when you're younger and your mom says, hey, don't put your hand on the stove, sometimes the stove's not on. But eventually, the stove is on when you act like a fool and you put your hand on the stove and you get burnt. Yesterday, the Cincinnati Bengals, in terms of their image in the NFL, they got burnt. Because when you lose and you start your year off 1-4, I don't care what you did the past 3 or 4 years. I don't care what you're capable of. I don't care how people view you. When it comes to this football season in 2024, I can't believe in you. I can't think that you'll be there at the end with the chance to take down Kansas City if you start your season 1-4. And also, when it starts with Cincinnati, let's address the biggest elephant in the room. It is inconceivable to me how their defense is awesome against Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs. It's like they have the answer to the test up against Kansas City before the test is even given out. But against any other team in the NFL, when they go up against any other quarterback, and you think it'd be the toughest going up against the Chiefs offense and Mahomes, this Cincinnati Bengals defense is horrible. Joe Burrow yesterday, if I just gave you the stat line before the game and I told you he was 30 of 39 for 392 yards and 5 passing touchdowns and interception, you would have thought easily, the Bengals would have defeated the Baltimore Ravens. But that wasn't good enough yesterday. And the Baltimore Ravens put up 41 points on the Cincinnati Bengals. So please, folks, stop telling me, hey, here comes Cincinnati. Or, hey, if Cincinnati could just do this, or if they could just do that. They got to start playing. They got to start finishing games. They got to start showing up. And in the games that they do show up in, they're playing just as tough as they can in the first quarter as they can in the fourth quarter. This is a team in the Cincinnati Bengals this year. And I'm not saying they're shot long term, but for this year, I cannot believe in them. I just can't when you're 1-4. They lost to my Patriots. The Patriots are terrible. The Patriots are trash. I watched my football team yesterday almost went up against the Miami Dolphins, and the Dolphins don't even have a quarterback. Like, look at the Patriots. And that's a team that the Patriots offensive line has only been told they look good once this year, and it was up against this Bengals grotesque defense. So I'm looking at this Bengals team this year. You lose to the Pats. You drop a game to Kansas City, and that was probably your best performance of the season, which shows you what we're dealing with when we're talking about a 1-point loss to the Chiefs. Jaden Daniels, I know he's a star. They made him look like a Hall of Famer when they played him 2 weeks ago. Whoop-de-damn-do, you beat the Carolina Panthers. If you can't beat the Carolina Panthers, you got more problems than I even thought. And then up against a heck of a team in Baltimore, a team with the Baltimore Ravens that we know how they're going to win. It's Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry. Your defense couldn't even just be average. Or you know what? Check that. Below average? If that defense was even below average yesterday, when Joe Burrow tosses 5 tutties, you win the game. Instead, that defense was horrible, was pathetic, was putrid, and an anemic defense yesterday. So stop waiting for the Bengals. I know this seems like we're going to be picking on our guy, Hot Take Hickey, but he really does reflect a big portion of football fans. And I'm not saying I haven't done this with Cincinnati. Heck, after week 2, I looked at the Bengals and I thought, okay, they displayed even in a loss why they are still the team that has the best chance of taking down the Chiefs. But that can no longer be said. And the reason why that can no longer be said is because they're 1-4. It doesn't matter if you almost lose a game in week 2 and people talk positively about you, if then a few weeks later, you only have one win on the season through 5 games. But Hickey, even late in that game yesterday, when it looked like Cincinnati was going to win, he tweeted out, remember when I told you the Bengals are back after that Chiefs game? Hope you listened. It's like we're so ready to crown the Bengals, and we're so ready to say, oh, the Bengals are back because we're just hoping they are in the postseason. We are hoping they are there because of what we've seen in the past where they have stepped up and they delivered that one time in shutting down Mahomes. And they were on that 3-game win streak at one point where they had 2 regular season wins followed up by the AFC Championship game as well. Like, those moments are in the rearview mirror now. When you're driving down the road and you're looking forward, you're looking at a football team that has a shiny car, but the mirror is falling off, one of the tires is flat, and your engine light is on right now. Do you think you're getting to the destination? I don't think so. If you tell me that's what I have to drive to get to the destination, it doesn't matter if you have the shiny car. If you don't have a tire working, if you can't see because one of the mirrors are busted and you got a window busted and your engine light's on and there's a problem, guess what? You're probably not getting to where you need to go. And that's the Cincinnati Bengals right now. They are the shiny sports car that has a lot of work that needs to be done and right now just isn't drivable. Because they have the hope, they have the look, they have the feel based off the past of a team that can get the job done. But this year, they haven't got the job done. And them sitting there at 1-4, I got no optimism anymore with this team. I said a few weeks ago, okay, even after the Commanders game, they beat the Panthers. Even if they lose to the Ravens, you got the Giants and the Browns after that, but I can't expect anything after this team. So could they go win their next 2 games? And can they be a 3-4 football team? I guess it's possible. But why should I expect it to happen when this football team has had moments this year to show who they could be and they failed to do so? Bill Parcells once said, you are what your record says you are. The Bengals right now are a 1-4 football team. So stop selling me and stop telling me about what they can be. Let's start talking about what they are. Now, let's get to the San Francisco 49ers. Because the Bengals-Ravens game, it was infuriating to watch Cincinnati get all that offense from Joe Burrow and not being able to slam the doors shut. I acknowledge it's unfortunate that Jake Moody got injured in this game and the 49ers had to use their punter as their kicker. And even though he made a field goal, they obviously didn't feel comfortable late in the game on like a 4th and 23, kicking a field goal, which would have been 40-something yards. But that's a game, if you're San Francisco, that San Francisco is another one of those teams. We all know what they can be. We've seen them be in 2 Super Bowls. We've seen them be in countless championship games. But there is a theme that is there with the 49ers. They find a way, and they find new ways and creative ways. It's almost like they're writing a script, how we can make ourselves look so great and then find a way to choke a game. But that's basically what they did yesterday, and there is a long list, even with all their success that San Francisco has had, where the 49ers have had some brutal, and I mean some pathetic losses where their coach, Kyle Shanahan and company, gag away a game. Like, you look at the Niners this year, what have they done? All right, they blew up the Jets. Congratulations. The Jets stink right now. You played one of the best teams in the league, and we didn't know at the time in the Vikings you lost. You gagged away a game to the Rams. It's the Rams' only win on the season. All right, you beat the Patriots. What the damn do? Let me throw you a parade. This isn't the Patriots with Belichick and Brady for crying out loud. And you had a game one up against the Arizona Cardinals, and you snatched defeat from the jaws of victory. And you know why it's now interesting? I'm not really concerned about the 49ers because you take a glance at that division. The Rams are just decimated with injuries. I know they lost to the Cardinals yesterday, but the Cardinals, to me, are extremely inconsistent. The Seahawks, they lost yesterday to the Giants. They're 3-2, so they're going to start come down to earth. Like the Niners, they could limp into the postseason, and it will probably still be good enough because of this division not being as good as what some, including myself, thought it could be before the year. It's not crazy to say that 9-8 wins this division. And who would have ever thought that? Like going into the year, we thought you needed 11, 12 wins to win this division. But the Rams are digging themselves in a hole that's going to be tough to climb out of even when they get healthy. I think the Cardinals have a limit. The Seahawks, they're going to be up and down with Pete Carroll no longer coaching that team and a new era coming in. That's just natural. So this Niners team can be 9-8 and they could get into the dance. And maybe once they're in the dance, you look around the rest of the NFC and it's like, okay, this is not, outside of the NFC North, there aren't really a lot of strong teams that you believe in the NFC. And for the Niners, it's just getting there to try to right the wrong of the past because of how many times they have got there. And I know that gets a little hypocritical with what I just said about the Bengals, but the 49ers have had more consistent success than the Bengals have had. So I look at the Niners, they'll be fine. And I know that they have some injuries too, but they are not looking like the dominant Niners of the past. And I know last year they went on a little stretch midway through the season, but they lost 3 straight. But this is to a point in the last 4 weeks, even the Patriot game, and I watched the entirety of the game, it wasn't like they were great up against the Pats. But you look at their schedule, like the Niners usually have some automatic wins. Tell me where the automatic win is from now until, let's say, the first week of December. They're at the Seahawks coming up on Thursday. They then play the Chiefs. They then play the Cowboys on Sunday Night Football. They're then in Tampa Bay. That's a 1 p.m. Eastern time game. They then play Seattle. They're in Green Bay. And then they're in Buffalo on a Sunday Night Football game. That's a brutal, and I mean a brutal schedule. And after that, to end the season, they play the Bears, the Rams, the Dolphins, the Lions, and the Cardinals. Like, I'm very fascinated by the next 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 games, what the Niners record is looking like. But this is a Niners team. They will get in the postseason, but I don't think they're going to be this dominating force that we've looked at the last few years saying, wow, I'm afraid to play the San Francisco 49ers. And even if they are looking like the dominant team and they have a lead, there's a mental hill that they have to step over and climb, and that's not choking away these games. Because we've seen Shanahan choke away NFC Championship performances. We've seen him choke away Super Bowls. And we've seen him choke away just this year 2 regular season games. And it's got to stop eventually. It is the Zach Gelb Show on the Infinity Sports Network. Where is the level of concern with the Bengals and the 49ers? For me, it's a 10 out of 10 for the Bengals. For the 49ers, it's at about a 4 out of 10. Where to get to the postseason, I'm not concerned. But to get to a Super Bowl, forget about winning it, just getting there. You could kiss that goodbye if they keep on playing like the way that they've been playing through the first 5 weeks of the season. All righty, we'll take a timeout when we come on back. Jeez Louise, you want to talk about a team with no hope? How about the Jets, Jets? Remember a few weeks ago in Samter? He's back, and he's a mush. He was off the Jet bandwagon. Now he's back when there's some optimism, and he was wearing that Jet jersey to rub it in my face after the Patriots loss, which, hate to break it to you folks, my team has won 6 championships. I know I'm starting to sound like a Yankee fan when I say that, but what I will say is when the Patriots are down and out, the Jets beating them isn't something that needs to be celebrated like you're actually beating a good football team. But the Jets did that, and since they've lost to the Broncos, when at one point Bo Nix had -7 passing yards. And yesterday, the Jets went to London, and even though it looked like the Vikings were kicking their ass early, Sam Darnold said, hey, come beat me. I'm begging you to beat me. Aaron Rodgers failed. Breece Hall failed. Robert Saleh failed. Sauce Gardner failed. Jets, Jets failed. We'll delve into the Jets when we come on back. And now, if your only hope is Devontae Adams saving this team, you're going to need a lot more than that. Zach Gelb Show, Infinity Sports Network. But first, football is back, and what better way to celebrate than winning some cash with Sleeper Picks? Sleeper Picks is a fantasy game, but you can win real money. Just pick more or less than at least 2 player stats. If your picks are right, you win. You can pick up to 8 players to win up to 100 times your money. And Sleeper has a couple huge offers to kickstart the football season. For new users, Sleeper will match your first deposit with up to $100 credit to your account. If you've already played, Sleeper's got discounts and player projections for you every week of the season. So download the Sleeper app now and use promo code SCORE, that's SCORE, and your first deposit will be double with the credit up to $100. What are you waiting for? Download Sleeper today and use code SCORE for a credit up to $100 match in your first deposit. That's code SCORE. Must be 18 years in most states and in state where it's legal. Promo code and other restrictions apply. Visit sleeper.com. Please wager responsibly. Gambling problem, call 1-426-2537 for help. Paid for by Blitz Studios.
You're in a 4-minute break. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. Forty-five seconds remaining. 30 seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
You're listening to the Zach Gelb Show on the Infinity Sports Network.
Stu, I'm just going to ask you a question right out of the gate. I'm going to say a name of a team in the NFL, and you just give me one word that describes that team. I'll even give you 2 words at most, but I want a word or 2 words that describes the team that I'm about to mention. The team I'm going to mention, the New York Jets. Your word or words are?
Utter disaster.
Okay. Mine was a mess. That's what they are. Just end the season. Robert Saleh is another one of those guys. Really good defensive coordinator, horrible head coach. And it's a shame because Robert Saleh seems like a really good dude. But when you're the coach of the Jets, half the battle's on the field, and then the other half is how you present yourself when talking to the fans, the media, and just your body language on the sideline. Robert Saleh, there are some moments that I see him on my TV, and I go, that's going to be a meme. Because he has now a blank stare look to him. And this dude has 0 answers. And he seems like he's clueless right now. It's one thing to lose a game, but it's another thing to just constantly be unprepared to start a game. When did the Jets start well outside of playing New England this year? And New England stinks. They had a horrible start against the Niners, a horrible start against Tennessee, a horrible start against the Broncos, and then yesterday they got off to a horrible start in London. And then they tried to play catch-up, and they almost won the game at the end until their quarterback that's supposed to solve all these answers threw an interception. So the coach doesn't got it. The quarterback who used to be great is now looking like a quarterback who's 40 years old playing on one leg. How many times are the Jet fan going to tell me, oh, they revamped the offensive line. Look at these guys that they brought in the offensive line. The offensive line stinks. And every Jet fan, and I like Breece Hall. I think Breece Hall has a bright future. But every Jet fan this offseason was talking about Breece Hall like he was Barry frickin' Sanders. And Breece Hall this year was MIA against the 49ers, and he hasn't had a pulse as of late as well. So it's like you look at the Jets, and their defense is overrated too. It's a good defense. It's not an 85 Bear defense like they thought they were. But this team, they don't do anything that is, okay, I'm afraid of them. And here's the bad part about this and the shameful part about this. This Jets team, when I got a chance to look at them going into the season, even with Rodgers being 40, and even with Rodgers coming off the Achilles injury, the Jets quarterback play for a long time has been so terrible that if the Jets just had average to above average quarterback play. And remember a few years ago before Rodgers pulled off 2 MVPs, back-to-back years, he goes, even when I'm not at my best, it's still better than like 95% of the league. Like even when I'm just have a fine season, it's still better than 95% of the league. They didn't even need Aaron Rodgers to look like that version of Aaron Rodgers. They just needed him to be competent at the quarterback position. And if he could be competent at the quarterback position with the way that this team is set up, you would think, okay, If they could win the amount of games they won last year with Zach Wilson, you would think they get 3 more wins with Aaron Rodgers and at least be a 10-win football team. But it's one thing to be 40, and it's one thing to come off an Achilles injury, but when your line gives you zero chance to process anything or zero chance to do anything, guess what? You look like a 40-year-old quarterback, and how a 40-year-old quarterback is supposed to look, especially coming off an Achilles injury. Like, I felt bad for Rodgers yesterday. Say what you want, whether you like Aaron Rodgers or not, because he could say some wacky things. This dude last week got hurt, and then again this week, he's clearly not 100%, so I at least give him credit for gutting it out. But I thought for a moment his career was over yesterday when he went down. And then there was a running into the punter, and then eventually he got right back on the field. But that left leg yesterday looked extremely swollen. It looked fat yesterday, that leg. And I know he's wearing some padding, but still, it was on the backside of his leg that's where I thought, oh, that leg does not look good with whatever he had underneath his pants, obviously. But this Jet team, they play the Bills coming up on Monday. Robert Saleh, he is not a good coach. But you start to look that people to get chopped and that go on the chopping block if this continues. I don't think it's off the table. Like, I know why Robert Saleh is still there. We all knew he wasn't any good of a coach going into the season. It's because Aaron Rodgers likes to control the entire organization. That stuff usually doesn't work out. It doesn't. Like, look at the Nets with Kevin Durant. They let KD run the entire organization, and they went from a team that was gritty and fun to a team that was absolutely miserable. At the end of the Kevin Durant era, it was like, okay, I'm good that they're going to be irrelevant for a while. But when you give all the power to someone in a team sport, I understand you make certain exceptions for star players. Like, there's preferential treatment to stars. But when you just have a coach in there in the NFL, which is a sport with grown men, and you just have a coach who is basically answering to the quarterback and only the quarterback, it's not an environment set up to win. And Saleh's one of those coaches that, similarly to the way that I talk about Sirianni, and I know Sirianni's been to the playoffs 3 times, been to a Super Bowl. So clearly Sirianni's been more successful than Robert Saleh. He's a player's coach. Now, you could be a player's coach and not be a doormat. But Sirianni is a doormat. Robert Saleh is a doormat. And when teams struggle, you need a leader, and you need a guy that is not only a player's coach, but someone that could turn into an old school style of football coach. Because sometimes in the locker room doesn't like their coach, and they could rally against, around that coach and like, oh, let's prove him wrong. It ends up leading to more wins. It ends up turning seasons around. Like, you look at the Patriots in the early 2000s. I remember Tom Jackson on ESPN. They hate their coach because he got rid of Lawyer Malloy. And they used that as motivation. And I know it ended up becoming an NFL dynasty, and the Jets aren't in that position. But when you just have a coach that's in there and is like, oh, everything's great, everything's wonderful, good job, you showed up to work, we'll pat you on the behind and send you on your way and give you a participation trophy. Like, sorry, that doesn't win in this league. Never has, never will. And when you get into the Jets, they lose on Monday night to the Bills, a team that has also had their own problems, and we'll get into Sean McDermott later, because that was some of the dumbest coaching I've ever seen yesterday. Run the ball, make the Texans use their timeouts, and then get into overtime, for crying out loud. But you can't even do that, and then the Texans end up winning the game. But when you are a coach like Robert Saleh, and you're an owner like Woody Johnson, who, even though the Jets aren't going to win anything, they're in a win-now mode, you can't just sit there and play with your thumbs. And guess what? Just trading for Devontae Adams, what's that going to do? Like, yeah, it will free up Garrett Wilson more, but Garrett Wilson put up 2 1,000-yard seasons with no one at quarterback. And that's the stunning part to me, is that Rodgers and Garrett Wilson, they can't get on the same page. Like, Lijay Duzabal told me last year, and leading into this year, he thought like Garrett Wilson with Rodgers had 1,500, 1,600, 1,700 yards, and it wasn't crazy. Because if you look at Garrett Wilson's number with a bunch of bad quarterbacks in this league so far, what he's been able to do through the first 2 years is extremely impressive. Garrett Wilson, and I know he had a good day yesterday, but Garrett Wilson, his first 2 years in the league, He had 1,103 yards in 2022 and 1,042 yards in 2023, and his quarterbacks weren't Aaron Rodgers. So this is a Jets team that, you know what? It's kind of sad, but it's true. The highlight of the Jets season is going to be beating up on a team in the New England Patriots that are probably going to be the number one pick in the draft, or at worst, the third pick in the draft. Like, they're anywhere from 1 to 3 in the NFL draft order. And beating them 24-3 was a parade thrown by Jets fans because of 25 years of frustration of not being able to beat that team that you would have thought they won a Lombardi trophy and they were having a parade down the Canyon of Heroes. That's what you would have thought. But then you lose to Denver, and I know Minnesota's undefeated. It is a good team. But Sam Darnold in that second half was saying, please, let us get our first loss of the season. And now you got a Buffalo team who I don't know what to make of the Bills, but Buffalo is coming into your house on Monday Night Football, and they've lost 2 in a row. And here's one thing. Even though Josh Allen got banged up yesterday and returned, I thought he had a concussion. I was surprised he returned. But I at least know that Josh Allen is going to show up. With the Jets, I don't know who's going to show up. Because that line stinks, so Rodgers probably doesn't show up. Garrett Wilson's hit or miss. Breece Hall, he's been MIA. And this defense, vastly overrated. My buddy Leroy Horde is texting me. I'll get to what he told me about the Jets in just a second. But Woody Johnson, if you don't win Monday, how do you justify keeping Robert Saleh? You got to fire him if that's the case. Because this team needs a kick in the ass, and if you just keep Saleh there, guess what Saleh's going to do? Oh, everything's fine. The sky's not falling. You know what Saleh is? He's that meme that I see online of the dog in the house that's burning down, and the dog smiling as there's fire all around him saying, yeah, everything's fine, everything's all right. Everything isn't right, Robert Saleh. Your line sucks. Your quarterback is 40 coming off an Achilles injury, and he looks like he's playing on one leg. Garrett Wilson and him, I know Garrett had a good game yesterday, but they can't get on the same page consistently enough. Breece Hall, once again, MIA. And once again, I'll say it for the 15th time this segment, the defense vastly overrated. So keep on having Robert Saleh coach this team. Everything's fine, everything's fine, everything's fine. No, it's not. The Jets are who the Jets will always be. And that's a team, whenever there's expectations, whenever there's hope, whenever there's optimism, they don't find a way to get it done. The Jets only win when they're not expected to win. They weren't expected to win Super Bowl III. They won. They weren't expected in the years with Rex Ryan to get to back-to-back AFC championship games. They didn't have great regular seasons. The Jets only deliver when they're not expected to deliver. But when there are big expectations and you have the big bright lights of New York shining down on you, and everyone's talking about you, and the Jets for a while felt like the epicenter of the football universe, the Jets don't only not show up. They become a circus. They become a disgrace, and they become a clown show. And that's who the Jets are. It is Zach Gelb Show on the Infinity Sports Network. Leroy Horde says, reminder, Aaron Rodgers is 40. This is what 40 looks like. And you know what? It's a fair point because we've all been like mind bleeped with what Tom Brady did and how long he was able to play into his career, into his mid-40s at such a high level. That doesn't happen. You know, even Drew Brees, his body was breaking down at the end and his teams are still able to have some success. But he cost his team some games at the end. When you get to this age, it's very tough to play well. And it's very tough to play well when you don't have an offensive line. Like, look at Brady in New England his last year. Didn't have an offensive line. Surprise, surprise. The team wasn't what they were expected to be. Goes to Tampa Bay, has a good offensive line, and boom, even after a mediocre regular season for Brady standards, they go out there and win a Super Bowl. You got to protect your 40-year-old quarterback. And the Jets don't protect their 40-year-old quarterback. Zach Gelb Show, Infinity Sports Network. We will take a break. When we come on back, we'll update you some of the biggest stories in the world of sports with some audio. We'll get to the news brief. We will also have some interesting audio from Adam Schefter when we come back on the Jets, on Devontae Adams, and how that assumption that Adams is going to wind up with the Jets, maybe not as much as a lock as we all thought it was going to be. So we'll get to that on the other side. Update time first. Here's the Ackman, Rich Ackerman.
Infinity Sports Network Sports Flash.
Sponsored by Progressive Insurance. Protect your family, your phone, and your furry friends with life, electronic device, and pet health insurance. There's an adage that says if you have two quarterbacks, you have none. Raiders head coach Antonio Pierce said he's still deciding who will start this weekend, whether it'll be Gardner Minshew or Aiden O'Connell. The Patriots have lost 4 straight and have bigger problems with captain and starting safety Jabril Peppers arrested on charge of strangulation and drug possession. The Bengals are coming off a crushing loss to the Ravens and have lost starting quarterback Dax Hill to a torn ACL. The Panthers have lost center Austin Corbett for the season due to ruptured biceps, and the Titans expect quarterback Will Levis to practice this week. He could be in the lineup Sunday after suffering a shoulder injury yesterday. Week 5 closes with the 4-0 Chiefs taking on the Saints, who are coming off back-to-back losses. The Tigers and Guardians take the field shortly for the first of 2 American League Division Series today. Tarek Skubal takes the mound, looking to even the series for Detroit. Matthew Boyd starts for Cleveland. The Royals and Yankees will follow after New York edge KC in the series opener. The starting pitchers are Carlos Rodon and Cole Reagans. I'm Rich Ackerman.
This is the Infinity Sports Network. Follow us on Instagram. Our handle is Infinity Sports Network. That's Infinity Sports Network to follow us on Instagram.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining.
1 minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. Forty-five seconds remaining. Thirty seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
Time for your daily news brief. We get you caught up on the rumors, reports, and reconnaissance from the day in sports.
It's time to Ask the Pros, where you, the listener, gets to ask us a question, and it's brought to you by O'Reilly Auto Parts. Simply tweet your question at INF Sportsnet or at Zach Gelb using the hashtag Ask the Pros. Be listening later in the show. We might answer your question. Think O'Reilly Auto Parts for all your car care needs. Get guaranteed low prices and excellent customer service from the professional parts people at O'Reilly Auto Parts. O'Reilly Auto Parts. Let's get to those JETS Jets. They lose another heartbreaker to the Minnesota Vikings yesterday in London. Adam Schefter was on to ESPN with Pat McAfee earlier today, and he was asked, well, did this loss to the Vikings expedite the Jets' need to go acquire Davante Adams by the end of the week? Listen up.
I don't think it expedited. I think it, if anything,
cooled it off.
Slowed it a little bit. Because here's the deal.
Davante said, I'm not going over there.
No. Look, there have to be people that say, okay, hold on. Do we want to now trade a second-round draft pick when we're not playing overly well right now? We're not reaching our potential. Do we think that a wide receiver is going to solve the issues that this team has been having? So I don't view that game and that result as making it more likely that the Jets would trade for him.
Here's the problem to that, Stu. Who's the guy in charge of making that decision? I know we'll all joke it's Aaron Rodgers. It's Joe Douglas. Joe, how many more years are you going to get? Like, if I'm Joe Douglas, I'm saying, like Les Snead said, F these draft picks, and I'm giving away a second-round draft pick to get Davante Adams, because if I don't give my fan base something positive to latch on to, in all honesty, like, I know I said that Robert Saleh should be fired if they lose to the Bills. I don't think the Jets would actually do it. And, like, I'm talking about in season. And for Joe Douglas, inevitably at the end of the year when Saleh does get fired, why should Joe Douglas stay? So I kind of look at this. If I'm the Jets, I disagree with Schefter, where maybe Davante Adams doesn't want to go there anymore. I still wouldn't believe that. I still would believe that he'd want to go to the Jets. But I'd have no problem giving up a second-round pick, because you got to save this ship from sinking. However, I said this before, I'll say it again. If I'm Davante Adams, I wouldn't go to the Jets. I look at I'd rather go to the Commanders right now with the way that Jaden Daniels is playing. I would try to get a reunion with the Green Bay Packers. The Ravens, they're looking pretty damn dominant with Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry. Go get Lamar his first ever number one wide receiver to play football with. You know, Buffalo, they could use a little shot in the arm. Those four teams right there, which I think are realistic, are all better destinations short-term and long-term right now than the New York Jets are. And I know we could all throw out Kansas City. I have a tough time believing Kansas City is going to happen. But as I've said before, if I'm Kansas City, I would give up a first-round pick for Davante Adams. Because guess what? That's going to be, 28-29 at worst for the Kansas City Chiefs? And the way that football's going this year, it's probably going to be the 32nd pick of the draft. Because we've seen this story many times before. Let's get one more in on the Jets. Here's Quincy Williams on another bad Jets loss.
I'm going to be honest, man. People get tired of hearing the same every week, bro. So people just got to start taking accountability from the top to the bottom. That's the main thing, bro. That's all I got to say for real.
What's the mentality of this team right now?
Like I said, people got to start taking accountability, bro. People get tired of hearing the same thing every week.
For you, what do you need to work on?
I'm tired of saying the same thing every week.
Here's the thing, and I know what we do. There will be aggregators. There will be people that take that quote and go, oh, Quincy Williams calls out the Jets for not taking accountability. That's fair, right? You listen to that, and he's saying players got to be more accountable from the top to the bottom. We all got to be more accountable. But, Stu, here's something that's lost in that. How much is that just player speak? Like, there are times, and you know this, being a fan of the Raiders, where players will get in front of a microphone and they'll say, hey, we need to be more accountable, and it starts at the top and trickles all the way down to the bottom. Now, a player could actually mean that, or a player could just say it because he needs to fill words when he speaks. But in this case, how is the follow-up not, and that audio was courtesy of SNY, when you say from the top to the bottom, like, who specifically are you talking about? Like, do you see instances where players or coaches aren't taking accountability and aren't holding themselves accountable? Now, in all likelihood, you're probably not going to get a genuine answer there, but the question still has to be asked. But I don't know, Stu. That seems to me it's more player speak than him actually being annoyed with one or two people in particular.
Yeah, I've heard, like you mentioned, I've heard a lot of that in the past, especially with the Raiders, and it doesn't usually change, to be honest with you.
The only thing that stays the same is the Raiders are still the Raiders and the Jets are still the Jets. Other things to change. Those two franchises, no thank you. Joe Burrow, critical of his team after their pathetic 1-4 start.
We're not a championship level team right now.
Thank you.
I like to think that, we'll come back and improve throughout the season to get to that point. But right now we are not, and we have to get better.
Thank you. It's amazing how he could accurately talk about this team, saying they're not a championship team. But people always tell you, oh, if they get hot, they could be a championship team. Now, how many more times you got to say that? They're 1-4 now. You want to tell me that the first 2 weeks of the season, okay, I can listen based off their past. But when you're just resting on your past and what you've done in recent history and you're expecting it to turn around after 5 weeks of the season, it's tough for me to really be all that bought in on the Bengals. And Burrow had 5 touchdowns yesterday, and it still wasn't enough to get the dub. That defense plays great against the Chiefs. Everyone else, PU. Okay, let's get to Gerard Mayo, who I'm becoming frustrated with when it comes to the quarterback. Here is Gerard Mayo on Jacoby Brissett's performance yesterday against the Dolphins.
It just wasn't good enough. I thought we played well enough defensively and on special teams to win the football game. And look, as the quarterback, and he understands this, he touches the ball on every single play, and we didn't win the game or score enough points to win the game. And I think he would echo that same sentiment, that it wasn't good enough.
So 2 things. Number one, Gerard Mayo has been very inconsistent when it comes to talking about his quarterback. And I saw today Adam Schefter was speculating that Drake May could actually play and start this weekend against the Texans. The only reason I think the Patriots aren't playing Drake May right now isn't because he's not ready. It's because they're trying to protect him. So if you're going to throw him in there in garbage time against the Jets and you don't start him against the Dolphins, which would have been a favorable matchup, why would you then start him against one of the better teams in the AFC in the Houston Texans? That doesn't make any sense. And as much as we want to get on the quarterback, once again, the offensive line is no good in New England. But one thing New England was able to do yesterday was run the football. So when you have your timeouts and it's 1st and 10 and you're driving, and I know they hit Polk and he just didn't get the 2 feet down in bounds, but they had a passing attempt on 1st down, a passing attempt on 2nd down, a passing attempt on 3rd down. They were at the Dolphins' 12-yard line with their timeouts. Ramondre Stevenson on 12 carries at 89 yards. Antonio Gibson on 6 carries at 52 yards. Why didn't you run the football there at least one time with the timeouts? That didn't make any sense to me. So if they play Drake May this weekend, it's like, what's the point? I need to see Gerard Mayo have a clearer message moving forward. Alrighty, let's go to Matt LaFleur on the Romeo Doubs situation. he was inactive and suspended for the game this past weekend.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to our conversation tomorrow. So I fully anticipate him coming back, and I'm hopeful that he'll come back and get ready to work. And, distractions happen in the National Football League. Distractions happen in life. And you got to do your best to just focus on the task at hand. And I thought our guys did a pretty good job of that.
And the Packers were able to win, so when you can send a message and still win, makes your leadership look a little bit better. Finally, there was a lot that did happen in college football this past weekend. We will get to all that later. But Ashton Jeanty did it again and only needed a half before his coaches said, okay, we've seen enough. You sent the message. Here is Greg McElroy on the Always College Football podcast on Ashton Jeanty when it comes to the Heisman Trophy.
Ashton Jeanty is the best player right now, pound for pound in the sport. Through 5 games, he's already over 1,000 yards. He's on pace for like 2,700 yards. It is not completely unthinkable to think that Ashton Jeanty can't get to beyond 2,500. He might even flirt with 3,000. I mean, the guy is just absolutely ridiculous. And you think Heisman too. We don't talk Heisman. You guys know this. We will talk Heisman in November because that's when the award is won. Traditionally, if you're a running back and you go for over 2,000, you're in the mix. Well, he's halfway there with potentially 8 games to play. I feel pretty confident in thinking that he's going to get to at least 2,000. And if he goes well beyond 2,000, it's a very real possibility he could bring home the most coveted individual award in the sport. Even though I don't think there's a lot of people watching his games, and he might not have a lot of, quote, Heisman moments, but he's incredible.
He is. And he'll be a finalist in New York. We'll see if he wins, but there's more push for him to win this award now than there's been in the other previous weeks. And what he did this past weekend was just stupid. On 13 carries, 186 yards, and 3 touchdowns. And he's on pace right now for 2,474 rushing yards and 38 rushing touchdowns. And no quarterback has really taken the baton and ran with it. Milroe just lost. Warnado had that comeback. But right now, it feels like this award is going to either Jeanty or Travis Hunter, but it's only October, so we'll see where we are a few months from now. Zach Gelb Show, Infinity Sports Network.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. 2 minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. Forty-five seconds remaining. Thirty seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
Infinity and beyond.
He's live. He's nationwide. This is the Zach Gelb Show.
All right, it is the Zach Gelb Show on the Infinity Sports Network. When I saw Stu today, the first thing Stu said to me, besides, hey, how you doing? How was your weekend? Was you were right. And I'm like, what was I right about? Because there's probably a lot with this weekend that I was wrong about. And he goes, you said whenever there's a weekend that people tell you it's a down weekend in college football, it always ends up being the weekend that's the most chaotic and the best one. And going into this weekend, there were a lot of matchups that weren't like, ooh, ah. Like we were talking about it, how nationally most people thought A&M Missouri was the best matchup. And I was like, hey, if you want a game that's just going to be close and sloppy and ugly, but it may be fun, like you could make a case that Nebraska and Rutgers was like one of the featured matchups of the weekend. And neither of those teams are ranked, actually. And that game ended up being sloppy and ugly. It really was. But what transpired this weekend in college football, it is like something that I've never seen before. And you know what Alabama had? Alabama had what the Pac-12 used to be, and how I described now how the Big 12 is, a Pac-12 type of loss. Alabama had a tremendous, unbelievable, fantastic win up against Georgia. The win of the college football season. It was sensational. Heck, we had Kalen DeBoer on a week ago. He joined us on Monday after the big win up against Georgia. And I think we talked about Vanderbilt for maybe 5 seconds because it was all about Georgia beating Georgia. And I even said to him at one point, Coach, I was asking him a question about something. And I go, I know that you're focused on the next one. You're focused on Vanderbilt. But no one in a million years would have told you that Vanderbilt was going to beat Alabama or even be in a game against Alabama. And I'm at a wedding on Saturday night, and my buddy turns to me and he goes, hey, it's 13-0. Vanderbilt on top of Alabama in the first quarter. I go, oh, we've seen this before. Maybe not for Vanderbilt up against Alabama, but we've seen the smaller school, the inferior school, the inferior opponent up against the big bad school, and it's not like the number one team in the nation couldn't come back. And it's crazy. Through the entirety of that game, even when they were down like 12 with 3 or 4 minutes to go and they quickly scored that touchdown, I still thought they were coming on back. But when Vanderbilt is running around the field, their own field afterwards celebrating, you couldn't even write that script if you tried, because no one would have believed it. No one would have thought that was even a possibility. When I was in college, this is how bad Vanderbilt has been. And I know Temple had a good run when I was at Temple. But Temple went to Vanderbilt, and they beat Vanderbilt. A little American Athletic Conference school named Temple University, the Owls at Temple, beat the big bad SEC, even though for a while it's the worst that the SEC has to offer in Vanderbilt. That was like 2014, I think. Maybe 2015. And now Vanderbilt, I know the take is all about Alabama this, Alabama that, where a week ago it's, Kalen DeBoer's the man. Jalen Milroe is the man. Ryan Williams is a sensation. And all those things still may be true. But this is the first time since Nick Saban has departed where the Alabama fan is like, yep, Saban wouldn't have lost that game. Or that's a moment that doesn't look Saban-like. And it's wild because just a week ago, everyone was saying, including yours truly, it only took a few games, only took a month for Alabama to be restored nationally in the college football world, having a Heisman hopeful, having the number one team in the country, and a coach that kicks everyone's ass, right? All those takes, though, poof, they evaporate into thin air, even if they still may be true later down the road after losing to Vanderbilt. And the Vanderbilt schedule this year and their games this year, I don't even know how to describe it. Look at this roller coaster ride for Vanderbilt. They beat Virginia Tech to start the year. That's a good win. I know Virginia Tech isn't as strong as I thought they were going to be before the season started, but Vanderbilt being an ACC school is still nothing that you just go, whatever. They beat Virginia Tech in overtime after they had a big lead and then blew it, and then they won the game in overtime. And they stopped drones late. They then played Alcorn State. They won 55-0. What did damn do? Vanderbilt then lost to Georgia State. Georgia State. They lost 36-32. Then they bounced back the next weekend, even in a loss, and they lose to Missouri, who's at number 7 in the country at the time, in double overtime. They lose by a field goal. And then the following week, they beat the number 1 team in the country in Alabama. Stu, I've seen a lot of weird things in sports. When you've defeated Virginia Tech and you lose to Georgia State, and then you almost take down Missouri, and then you beat Alabama, I'm supposed to describe things on the radio? I can't describe that. That's just stupid. That's really stupid when you take a look at what transpired there. I'm sitting there at this wedding, and I had enough Maker's Mark, if I'm being honest. I had enough Yinglings and Coronas as well. And I had to put the game on. Because eventually there's a time where you're looking, and you're like, this is getting late in this game. This is getting intriguing. And even when the game ended, I'm sitting there, and I'm like, Vanderbilt just beat Alabama? I know I was having some fun at this wedding. But nah, I know I'm a little intoxicated, but it's still, that's not even believable. And I kept on sitting there saying, Vanderbilt just beat Alabama? Alabama just lost to Vanderbilt? Even still, when I say it 2 days after the game, I still can't believe it. I was on yesterday. doing a Sunday morning football. And I must have said in the first 15-minute segment, even when I say Vanderbilt defeated Alabama, an alarm goes off in my head. Like, Zach, maybe you misspoke. But that's what did transpire, Stu. I can't even believe it 2 days later.
It's pretty unbelievable. And it was at a time where I was watching the end of the Mets game and the beginning of the Yankees game. There's a bit of an overlap. So I was watching mostly that.
You only got one TV set up?
No, I have two.
Okay.
So I was watching those two. And then the Mets game ended. And I'm like, okay, let's look for a college football game to watch.
Oh, that you direct all your attention.
Yes. And then I was like, wait a second. They're losing 13-0? How is that possible? Like, no. And then I turned it on and watched it. But I watched it and I almost still can't believe it.
Yeah, and you know what? That weekend, even though it was, at night, the weekend in college football was just bonkers. So you have Bama and Vanderbilt. Before I get to the rest of the weekend and give you my thoughts, let's play their quarterback, Diego Pavia. He was so emotional on ESPN after the win and the SEC network. You got to listen to this audio. Listen up. Here's the quarterback.
Look at this. Look at this. Danny, we're hurt.
Diego, what were you saying to your team to finish this game?
Games like this change your life, you know what I mean? It's all about hype nowadays, and I don't like it like that, but it's a reality of NAL and all that stuff, but, just stay grounded, be where my feet are, and every single day tomorrow I got to work on Kentucky.
You had 70 family members here. What did it mean to do this in front of them?
Where they at? Where they at? Where's the family? Where's the family? Come on.
That's awesome. And he was at New Mexico State the last few years. And now he's the quarterback at Vanderbilt. When he transferred to Vanderbilt, did anyone think they were going to beat Alabama? No. That's wild. You also got to see why Missouri's just not as good as what people thought they were. Now, to get to these other games, it's like a few weeks ago we asked the question, Tennessee, Ole Miss, Missouri, who's the best out of those three? We just saw Ole Miss lose last week to Kentucky. We will get to Tennessee and their performance against Arkansas in just a bit. And then Missouri not only loses to A&M, they get blown out by A&M. And you know what? Let me give credit to Mike Elko, because I think things get misconstrued when I talk about A&M. I like Mike Elko. I just hated how the A&M fans vehemently opposed the potential hire of Mark Stoops. But you had Marcel Reed playing when Wegman was hurt. There was that conversation, would they go back to Wegman? They did. And Connor Wegman was awesome. And A&M ran the football as well and just pounded Missouri. But A&M, you look at their schedule now, especially with how it's a down year for college football in terms of, man, there's a lot of teams that are racking up losses already. And we had a conversation in a 12-team college football playoff. Would a 3-loss team get in? You may get a 3-loss team in this year with some of these early upsets and early surprises. But A&M in week 1, they were so flat. Like, Stu, you saw it at A&M at College Station against Notre Dame, and Notre Dame isn't even all that good. And Notre Dame didn't even play a great game, and they still beat A&M. And to see that A&M team a month later crush at the time the 9th best team in the country, 41-10, that speaks to the coach that Mike Elko could be. Now, I can still have a problem with the process at A&M, but Elko knew that school was their DC, then was at Duke. I like Elko. And they went to the Swamp a few weeks ago. I know Florida stinks, but they blew them out. You beat Arkansas last week, and then you just really took it to Missouri. And you know when I liked A&M in that game? I took a look at the line. And you have a top 25 team, in A&M, 25th in the country, but they were going up against number 9 Missouri, and even though A&M was home, they were only a 2.5-point favorite. I felt like that line was trying to mislead people and having them plus the money on Missouri, and that's just the way that I look at it. And I ended up thinking A&M was going to win that game outright. But what an impressive statement by A&M. We'll keep it moving. Tennessee, Arkansas. Very disappointing performance by Tennessee. And you know what's kind of weird? With Tennessee, it was always, was their defense going to be good enough? And there was a lot of confidence with the offense. The defense was fine. The offense just let them down. And at the end of the game, Iamaleava, he's got to throw the ball. He ran out of bounds. And I know Milton did something similarly in recent years too. So I just didn't get that one. And then Michigan loses to Washington, and USC falls to Minnesota, where they originally said that on the push play that Minnesota was short, but he was clearly in my opinion. So you had 5 teams in the top 11 lose this weekend. USC, with Lincoln Riley, who's overrated, lose to Mr. Row Your Boat and PJ Fleck. Michigan, even though they had a nice win up against USC, it just shows you that Michigan, with what they did up against Texas, that's true of who they are. When you don't have a quarterback, you don't have a lot of chance of having success. So good win for Jed Fish in Washington. Tennessee goes down to Arkansas. Missouri gets blown out by A&M. And Alabama, the Alabama Crimson Tide, lose to Vanderbilt. So I was looking at the AP Top 25 poll. Here's what I don't get. So if you want to tell me that Penn State is better than Alabama in the rankings, okay. I even talked to Hickey during the break. Would you put Alabama behind Penn State like the AP did? And he is Mr. Penn State propagandist. He even said no. But okay, at least Penn State is undefeated. At least Oregon is undefeated. And even though I think Alabama is better than Miami, at least Miami is undefeated. The AP makes no sense to me. So they have Texas 1, Ohio State 2. That was expected. Oregon 3 expected. I didn't know if Penn State was going to get to 4, but they're undefeated. Okay, Penn State at 4. How do you put Georgia at 5, at 4-1, and how do you put Miami at 6-6-0, but then you put Alabama 7th at 4-1? Alabama beat Georgia. So I get it. The Georgia loss isn't as bad as Alabama losing to Vanderbilt, but then Vanderbilt beating Alabama, what does that make it say about Alabama, who Georgia couldn't beat? So that to me is funky when Alabama and Georgia have the same record. And it's not the first time this happened. But Alabama isn't ranked higher than Georgia because they lost to an unranked Vanderbilt team. And quite frankly, we'll find out a lot about Oregon this weekend and Penn State because they go up against one another. Texas has a big boy win. I know Michigan is down, but they blew out Michigan in the Big House. Penn State still got to show me something against a competent opponent. I know they crushed West Virginia, so give them credit. But ever since then, I think they've been playing with some fire. Georgia barely beat Kentucky and lost to Alabama. Miami, I forgot about the Miami game. They were down 25 points to Cal. And Cal couldn't even get that game. It's like you look at the results this weekend. I didn't like going to 12 teams. I think it's too many. But everything is shaping out for college football to win this year with this 12-team format. Because there's a lot of really good teams that are losing. And I don't know if, like right now, I think Ohio State will be a great team this year. Texas has showed you they could be a great team. But I don't know how many great teams you have in college football. And I went through it based off the AP rankings when I'm just looking at the Associated Press poll. And I put together, based off those rankings with the college football playoff format, what this 12-team college football playoff would look like if it started today. Your conference champions. Texas would win the SEC right now, they'd be 1. Ohio State would be the Big Ten, they'd be 2. Miami would win the ACC, they'd be 3. Matt Campbell and Iowa State would win the Big 12, they'd be 4. Those would be your 4 buys. Then based off the rankings, Oregon 5 would host Boise State. Boise State almost beat Oregon this year. Penn State would host Clemson in a 6-11 game. Here comes Dabo Sweeney. Georgia 7 would host Ole Miss 10. And Alabama 8 would host Tennessee 9. Now, I know a lot of these teams that I just mentioned play one another. And they got tougher games still on their schedule. But that's how we sit here right now on October 7th, based off the AP poll, what the 12 teams and who the 12 teams and what the matchups would be in the college football playoff. Just simply unbelievable. So much for that being a down weekend in college football. That was something. With how many teams in the top 10, top 11 did go down. That was awesome. An awesome weekend. And once again, I still can't believe that Alabama lost to Vanderbilt. Just can't believe it. It is the Zach Gelb Show on the Infinity Sports Network. We'll take your calls next. 855-212-4227 if you want to jump in. 855-212-4227. When we come on back, the Chiefs are the number 1 team in the AFC. Who's the number 2 team in the AFC? Is it the Texans? Is it the Ravens? Do you still give Buffalo a shot? We'll get to that next. But first, sports fans, listen up. 1 in 8 men will be diagnosed with prostate cancer, and bladder leaks can be a side effect. That's why Depend is teaming up with the Prostate Cancer Foundation to encourage screening, because health is a long game, and it's yours to win. Now here's the cool part. Through November, Depend is contributing up to $300,000 to prostate cancer research by donating 40 cents for every purchase of shields, guards, and Real Fit products. Void in Mississippi. Learn more at Depend.com.
You're in a 4.5-minute break. Four minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. .45 seconds remaining. .30 seconds remaining. 15 seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
Welcome back to the Zach Gelb Show on the Infinity Sports Network.
It is the Zach Gelb Show on the Infinity Sports Network. Who has the best chance this year to prevent the Chiefs from representing the AFC in the Super Bowl? Ravens, Bills, or Texans are the three choices that I put on there. I couldn't even think of a fourth team to put down. And I even feel great about putting the Bills there because the last 2 weeks, the Bills have been crap. But you can't put the Jets. You can't put the Dolphins. I know the Broncos are 3-2, but let's pump the brakes. The Chargers are 2-2. Maybe, assuming that Herbert gets healthy. Steelers are fraudulent. Browns stink. Bengals stink. So it's like, who else are you going with? But right now, those early returns in that poll question, which you can find on my Twitter page, @ZachGelb, ZACHGELB, who has the best chance this year to prevent the Chiefs from representing the AFC in the Super Bowl? 51.4% say the Ravens, 33.8% say the Texans, and 14.9% say the Buffalo Bills. Now, let's just spend a moment talking about the Bills. There's 32 seconds left in that game. The Bills came back to tie things up after having a very underwhelming first half. The Bills are basically making Josh Allen, and I know his stats didn't read well yesterday, but they're basically saying you're going to have to carry us to victory. It is 1st and 10 for the Buffalo Bills at their own 3. You gotta run the ball in this spot. And I know that the Texans had their timeouts, but doing 3 passing plays made no sense to me. And is there a good chance you could get into field goal range with 32 seconds left? Maybe if you want to pass on the first play, you hit a big play, okay. But when you don't hit on the first play, you gotta run the ball. And the Bills didn't do that. They elected to throw on 2nd and 3rd down, and then the Texans got the ball back, completed 1 pass, burned the timeout, and then kicked the field goal and won the game. Here's why you got to run the ball in that spot. If you're just going to throw the ball over and over and over again in 32 seconds from your own 3, and you don't complete one of those passes, like it's one thing to throw it, you don't complete one of those passes, you then create a very tough situation for your punter. Because your punter can't get a full delivery and a full windup on his punt and go through his full routine because he doesn't want to get the ball blocked, and you are so close to where the ball is snapped to the end zone that you don't have a margin for error without costing your team the game. So Sean McDermott has had some blunders coaching this team. Man, it's not the same as the decision to not squib it and your defense choking with 13 seconds left, because that was a playoff game in the divisional round when you had Kansas City on the ropes. But for an isolated spot, that is just saying to the Texans, hey, you let us come back in this game. CJ Stroud had some boneheaded decisions, the intentional grounding, the turnovers, and he finally looked like a young quarterback, which he hasn't for most of his career. The year and a half in the league, whatever it is. But for McDermott yesterday, he had an opportunity for people to talk about Buffalo differently, going into Houston and stealing that game. And when he had it in his hands and had a chance to get to overtime and go get a W, he was basically like, nope, it's hot potato. Oh, this is a win. Let me throw that W right back to the Texans. Here is Sean McDermott on the clock management at the end of the game.
And when you talk about holding 3 timeouts, where we were, they've got a really strong leg field goal kicker. We knew that. There's a potential, if the situation goes 3 straight runs, you're running 6 seconds off potential each time, and you're maybe in a similar situation, So either way, we got to do a better job, and that starts with me 100%.
Oh, boy. I get he could say it starts with me, that's 100%, but Sean McDermott, you did a great job in building the Bills back up. Like, Sean McDermott is a good football coach, but you reach a limit. Like, building up this team, marvelous. Getting this team to be a consistent contender, marvelous. But now they're stuck. And the Bills and the Pagula family are afraid what life is like without Sean McDermott. And that skepticism to get rid of him and that fear and that apprehension of seeing what life is like, without him is going to prevent this team from taking that next step forward. The other storyline here was, of course, Stephon Diggs. Now, Stephon Diggs, I thought he was going to get a touchdown in this game because I thought he would be so selfish where he'd basically tell, hey, CJ Stroud, you want me to behave this year? Get me a touchdown. Now, he did lead the team in receiving yards, 6 receptions for 82 yards, but he gets his revenge as the Houston Texans get the win over the Buffalo Bills. Here is Stephon Diggs on what it meant to him to beat the Bills.
Honestly, it meant a lot to me. Held it in all week, energy-wise. Try not to bring it up too much. Obviously, we had an interview early in the week. I just try to keep it professional, but obviously in the back of my mind, it meant a lot to me, and I wanted to do more showing than telling. I'm not going to sit here and act like it was just regular. It meant a lot to me. And it was reassuring that the guys around me knew that it meant a lot to me, even if I didn't say it. Because I try to just keep it poised and treat every week like it's the same, you know what I'm saying? But I'd be lying if I said it didn't mean a lot to me.
I appreciate that honesty. Because sometimes he could be a little bit phony, blaming the Vikings for what happened at the end, blaming the Bills for what happened at the end, and basically making it seem like Buffalo, that he broke up with Buffalo and Buffalo didn't break up with him. But you knew that game meant more to him. Whether he's in the right or wrong is a different topic. But I appreciate him at least acknowledging that it's not player speak where it's like, oh, yeah, no, any given Sunday, that game is just as important as a game 4 or 5 weeks from now. It obviously meant more to Stephon Diggs. Here is Josh Allen on losing to Stephon Diggs. Let's hear what the Bills quarterback sounded like.
No, I think, I'm not on social media. I don't see any of that. Understand he's on their team. He's a great player. He made some good plays tonight for them, and he was on the winning team. And, it came down to a last-second field goal and something that, we're going to have to learn from and grow from.
Come on. Not on social media and all that stuff. Hey, Josh Allen, Zach Gelb here, Buffalo News. WGR. At least I know a publication there. Why do you really hate Stephon Diggs? Why does Stephon Diggs really hate you? You guys used to be like best buds. What happened? Just wondered. I want to know. 855-212-4227. 855-212-4227. Uh-oh. Adam from Toronto is on the line. Big Bills fan. Adam, go ahead.
Zach, I hope you're ready to suit up in New York this week because you and I are going to go play wide receiver for the Buffalo Bills because that's who Josh Allen might as well be throwing to. Before I get to Sean McDermott, I'm going to rip into the wide receiver core. Mac Hollins, bomb. Curtis Samuel, bomb. Whatever, I'm the biggest Dolphins Gage fan. I don't know what's happening with him. Keon Coleman looks too slow for the NFL. He's throwing to nobody. He completed 4 of 18 passes to wide receivers yesterday, and at least half of them were just either the wide receiver running the wrong route or dropped. It was disgusting to watch. Let me get to Sean McDummy. Zach, before the season started, I called you. I said Sean McDermott is not a top 10 coach. And you know what? I'm going to take that back. He is a top 10 coach. He's a great coach until 2 minutes left in the fourth quarter in a tight game when his brain shuts off completely. Fool me once, shame on me. Fool me twice, shame on you. What happens when you fool me 6 or 7 times? Let me go through this. The Hail Murray game, the Tennessee game a couple years ago, the Denver game with too many men on the field, the Eagles game, icing the kicker in the rain from a 60-yard field goal, and then you mentioned it from the top, the Kansas City game. When does this end, Zach? When does it end? Because Josh Allen will never hold up the Lombardi Trophy with his bozo coaching him. I don't get it. I don't get where his brain goes with 2 minutes left in the fourth, man. It is the most frustrating thing in the world to watch. You know it's bad when Scott Hansen on Red Zone is losing his mind. It's horrible, man. I am so frustrated, as you can tell.
So let me try to uplift you here, Adam. If they give you your wish, let's say they give you your wish and they get rid of Sean McDermott, who you called Sean McDummy, and I even had to chuckle at that, even though I like Sean McDermott. And you know why they have not fired him yet. It's because From 2000 to 2016, they didn't make the playoffs one time. Ever since he's got there, he's only missed the playoffs once, and they've been a consistent team. But if they want to take that next step, I do agree and acknowledge that you were right. I think they have to move on. Do you think this team would bring in Bill Belichick?
Oh man, I can't answer that. That would be.
Do you want to win? Because Bill needs talent.
I do, and he's got talent. The Bills have talent, and they have a franchise quarterback. But the problem is, I think the Bills need an offensive-minded head coach, and Bill's a defensive-minded guy.
Okay.
But I would love.
Can I throw out one defense? I'll give you one more defensive name.
Sure.
Because the offensive-minded coaches, they're all crapshoots. You don't have a proven offensive guy that is available out there right now. Like, you could talk about the Lions' offensive coordinator. You never know the jump from going from an OC to a head coach.
Right.
Would Mike Vrabel get the job done for you?
I would love Mike Vrabel. He knows how to manage a clock with 2 minutes left. He would not have let that happen yesterday, and he sure as hell wouldn't have let the 13-second game happen. I don't think any coach lets that happen. But I've been a big fan of Mike Vrabel. He's an expert when it comes to milking the clock and managing the clock. So yes, I would take Mike Vrabel.
If you want to save this team in season now, and I like Brandon Beane a lot, friend of the show.
Devontae Adams.
Go get Devontae Adams.
Yeah, they have to do something, Zach, because he's throwing to nobody right now, especially when there's injuries to Khalil Shakir, man.
Yeah,
Khalil Shakir is the only guy that he trusts, man. And it was obvious. You could see it in the numbers even. That's not Josh Allen. Josh Allen isn't 9 for whatever he was. That's a bad game, but he's got nobody to throw to, and he doesn't trust anybody. And there was, even when he was throwing to guys, Zach, there was no separation. It was just a short little throw, and then they get tackled. There's just no separation between the wide receivers and the defensive team. It's crazy, man. So I would love Devontae Adams. I'd love Alvin Kamara. I'd love anybody at this point. Anybody that can help out that wide receiver room, man.
Now, can I get underneath your skin here before I let you run?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
How about Doug Peterson? He may need a job in a few weeks. Adam, appreciate it. Thanks so much. Let's go to Xander in Kansas City next up on the show. Xander, who do you think is the biggest threat to the Kansas City Chiefs? Just wondering.
Biggest threat has got to be the Baltimore Ravens. If I'm a Kansas City Chiefs, the one team that I don't want to see when it comes down to it is the Baltimore Ravens. And it's because of what your guy that was just on about the Bills just talked about. It's because when it comes down to being able to control a game, now I know we just beat the Ravens, but it came down to the last second. It wasn't like it was a blowout. It was a good game. And the Ravens are going to get better, and they're showing they're getting better as the season going on. And the last person I want to see in the fourth quarter when it comes to trying to get the ball back to Patty is Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson with the ball, right, because of that run game. And lastly, before I let you go, if there's one thing I could promise you, Devontae Adams isn't going anywhere near Buffalo. If there's one place Devontae Adams isn't going, it's Buffalo. So we can get that out of our minds. But because the Bills just are horrendous. The coaching is horrendous. Josh Allen, he doesn't have any help, but it's not going to come in the form of Devontae Adams. I appreciate the call.
You got it, Xander. And I don't think Devontae Adams is going there, but you should try. I wouldn't say the Bills are horrendous. You know, Sean McDermott has some blunders, obviously, but Josh Allen, to me, is still a top 3 quarterback in the NFL. You know what, though? I do think the answer to this question right now, who has the best chance this year to prevent the Chiefs from representing the AFC in the Super Bowl, Ravens, Bills, or Texans, it's actually the Ravens. And I'll take it a step further. There's not a lot of great MVP candidates this year because it's usually a quarterback award at the quarterback position. Derrick Henry should get some MVP play. Right now, with what I've seen so far in the NFL, if I'm picking an MVP right now in the league, it is actually Derrick Henry. And the Ravens, a lot of us are like, oh, we're not going to buy back in on them when the season ended last year because they had this great regular season. They failed in the postseason. The Ravens have a different feel with Henry as their running back because that's so tough to defend. You control so much of the clock, and you could race out to these big leads with the Baltimore Ravens, and the defense is still good even with the changes on the defensive side of the ball. And Harbaugh's a professional coach. I know we said last year, if it's not now, then it's never. But really for the Ravens, if it's not now, it's never. And I did pick the Ravens before the year to get to the Super Bowl in the AFC. Don't ask me my NFC prediction. It was the LA Rams, but they've been hurt. So I would go Ravens 1, Texans 2, and actually the Bills 3. And I know a few weeks ago I said the Bills are the best team in the league, but what they've done the last 2 weeks, I thought they were going to lose to the Ravens. That Texans game, it's not that they lost, it's how they lost. It was McDermott just giving the game away. So the returns in that poll right now, 51% say the Ravens, 33.3% say the Texans, and 15.6% say the Bills. We will do onside, offside next. Update time first, though. Here is the Ackman, Rich Ackerman.
Infinity Sports Network Sports Flash.
Oh, making it tougher on the Texans. Challenge the Chiefs. Wide receiver Nico Collins described as week-to-week with a hamstring injury suffered in yesterday's win. Patriots safety Jabril Peppers was arrested for assault, allegedly trying to strangle someone, as well as drug possession charges believed to be cocaine. Bengals corner Dax Hall could be done for the season with a presumed torn ACL, while Titans quarterback Will Levis suffered a shoulder injury yesterday. He is expected to practice later this week, and Raiders head coach Antonio Pierce said he's still evaluating his quarterback position. The first week of October still has featured some surprises in the NFL, and the 5-0 Vikings, the Chiefs will try to join them in that select company when they host the Saints to close out Week 5. Each of Kansas City's first 4 games have come down to the wire. New Orleans has dropped back-to-back games by a total of 5 points. The division series continue in the American League, and right now in the bottom of the second, the Guardians and the Tigers are scoreless. The Yankees outlast the Royals in Game 1 and look to go up 2-0, with Carlos Rodon making his first postseason start in pinstripes against the Royals' Cole Reagans. I'm Rich Ackerman.
This is the Infinity Sports Network. Follow us on X. Our handle is INF Sports Network. That's INF Sports Network on X.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. 2 minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. Forty-five seconds remaining. Thirty seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
Zach's taking on the most polarizing issues in sports. Which side of the line of scrimmage will he end up on?
Offside. Defense number 69.
It's Onsides, Offsides with Zach Gelb.
All right, Stu, show me what you got. What do we got cooking today?
All right. Now, after the Steelers started 3-0, some called for Mike Tomlin to name Justin Fields the full-time starter at the quarterback position.
Me.
But now, after 2 straight losses, the door seems to be wide open again for Russell Wilson to take the job once he's healthy. Onsides, offsides, once healthy, Russell Wilson should start for the Steelers.
I'm still going to go offside. I do believe eventually, right, since the Steelers keep on kind of operating with kid gloves with Russell Wilson, that they will give Russell Wilson an opportunity. But when I watch the Steelers, I don't think the biggest problem right now is the quarterback. I know it's what we most obsess over, saying they need a quarterback, they need a quarterback, they need a quarterback, but this line is not good. George Pickens thinks he's a stud, and he's not. He doesn't create enough separation. They're missing Jaylen Warren right now. You know, this team has a lot of problems on the offensive side of the ball. I still think that Russell Wilson or Justin Fields is a higher upside now in the year of 2024 than Russell Wilson, but I do believe he'll eventually get that opportunity to play, you know, down the road. But when you say once healthy, Russell Wilson should start for the Steelers, I'm not ready to say that yet. I will go offside.
Offside.
After a slow start to the season that saw him average under 135 yards in his first 2 games with no touchdowns and 2 picks, Caleb Williams has caught fire. The number 1 overall pick now has 2 300-yard performances in his last 3 games with 5 touchdowns and 2 interceptions after yesterday's impressive performance against the Panthers. Onsides, offsides, you still believe Caleb Williams will be the best quarterback in this year's draft?
So I had Caleb ranked 1 and Jaden ranked 2. But I kept on saying how much I really like Jaden Daniels. Whew. Caleb Williams, I think the earlier part of the season was more so a proper representation of the organization rather than Caleb Williams. Jaden Daniels, though, I think the recent history matters. Like, I know Caleb Williams won a Heisman and Jaden Daniels won a Heisman. And they both transferred into their last stops of USC and LSU. And I know that Jaden Daniels didn't, win at LSU. And Caleb Williams didn't win at USC either. But what Jaden Daniels able to do coming over from Arizona State, where he was at compared to where Caleb Williams is coming over from Oklahoma, yeah, it's more impressive with Jaden Daniels. So I'm actually going to say, and I know it's only 5 games in, I think both are going to be really damn good. But I think Jaden Daniels is just a little bit better. So you still believe Caleb Williams will be the best QB in this draft? Not like Caleb's going to be bad, but I think Jaden's better, so I will go offside.
Offside. All right, my Raiders, they finally lost patience with quarterback Gardner Minshew, benching him in yesterday's game.
That was a big sigh that you let out there.
Yeah, after a stupid throw that led to a 100-yard pick six by Patrick Surtain.
I had the Raiders yesterday at plus 3.5. When they're up 10-0, I'm like, not even saying they're going to win the game, but I at least thought they would cover being a 3.5-point dog. And they didn't do that.
They were up 10-0 inside the 10-yard line about to score to make it 17-0 against the Broncos. Yes.
Well, like you're playing the 85 Bears and the 2007 Patriots. Come on.
Well, Aiden O'Connell came on in relief, but completed just 50% of his passes with an interception of his own. And head coach Antonio Pierce today said there is no decision on who will start against the Steelers this Sunday. Onside, offsides.
That's encouraging.
Yeah, no decision yet. Onside, offsides. The Raiders should start O'Connell in their next game.
Well, O'Connell sucks. Minshew sucks. So we'll see who we're going to throw out there is pretty much what the coach is saying. I would say yes onside, and I even thought it was a mistake before the season started playing and saying that Minshew was going to be the starter and that he won the job. It wasn't like anyone ever thought Minshew was going to be their guy long term. Minshew is a really good backup. He could start some games and have some energy and look competent. But for Aiden O'Connell, not that I think he's the guy, but where the Raiders are, at least show that he's not the guy and let him start the season and then go to Minshew if he needed to. But they did that backwards. I do think they'll start O'Connell, and I think they should start O'Connell, but I don't think it's going to be all that different. But yeah, I would go on sides. Can't get any worse than what you saw yesterday.
Cannot get much worse.
Good. Hopefully not.
Boise State superstar running back Ashton Jeanty joined the show last week and set this lofty goal for himself.
Yeah, 267, open up the season, 6 touchdowns. 192 rushing yards against Oregon, 3 rushing touchdowns. 127 rushing yards up against Portland State, and this past week up against Washington State, 259 yards and 4 touchdowns. What's in store for this week? Jeez, it's been unbelievable. What are we thinking?
I'm thinking, something along those lines. That's the standard now as an offense is, I would say 150 to 200 plus rushing yards a game. That's what we've been putting up. So, that's what we got to keep doing.
Now, Jeanty more than lived up to that standard, rushing for 186 yards and 3 more touchdowns.
In a half on 13 carries.
In a half. He is now on pace for 2,474 yards and could certainly challenge the great Barry Sanders' single-season record of 2,628 yards in 1988. Onside, offsides, Jeanty has leapfrogged both Jalen Milroe and Travis Hunter as the Heisman favorite.
He has in the odds. He's plus 225 to win the Heisman. Hunter's plus 350. Milroe fell down to 1,000 after that performance, and Cam Ward's now at plus 450. And yeah, it should be Ashton Jeanty. It's who's the most outstanding player in college football. Well, that I've seen this year, it's either Jeanty or Travis Hunter. Those are the 2 most outstanding players because of Hunter's ability to play both ways. But when Jeanty's on pace for all those yards that you just said, and also 38 rushing touchdowns, imagine they let him play the second half. And I'll say this for Boise State fans too. I know everyone's going to talk about Jeanty. I think the most impressive part of that game, and I get it's only Utah State, they finally displayed a passing attack. And the goal for Boise State is to get in the college football playoff. Madsen was 21-25 for 256 yards and 3 touchdowns. Impressive performance by him as Boise State wins 62-30. So when you ask me, Jeanty is leapfrog Jalen Milroe and Travis Hunter as the Heisman favorite? Yeah, he has in my mind. Onside, I would say right now it's Jeanty 1, Hunter 2. If I had to get my ballot today, I'd put Cam Ward 3 after Miami had that comeback, even though they looked like he was about to just get, plummet right down the Heisman odds, and then Milroe loses to Vanderbilt. So those would be the 3 names right now.
Now, South Carolina got smoked by Ole Miss 27-3 on Saturday, but that didn't stop Gamecocks defensive end Dylan Stewart from maybe the worst sack celebration ever. After taking down Jackson Dart, Stewart used his hands to mimic shooting Dart with a machine gun while the quarterback laid on the ground. Onsides, offsides, Stewart should be suspended at least 1 game for his actions.
So he's a freshman. It's stupid. You shouldn't be celebrating a sack in that spot when you're down 27-3, and you can't use a an air gun, let's just say, to then direct it at the quarterback. I'm not condoning what he did. I just don't think he needs to be suspended. I don't. You handle that internally. You could punish him internally. I don't think you need to suspend a kid for a game for doing that. I don't think he did that, and he's like, I'm literally shooting Jackson Dart, and I know people turn that into a gun debate and all that stuff, and I'm not going to do that here. It was stupid what he did. I don't think you need to sit him down for a game. Let Shane Beamer handle that internally. So Stewart should be suspended at least one game for his actions. I will go offside.
Offside.
All right, last one here. The MLB playoffs are off to an exciting start, mostly because of your Mets. Now, yesterday, for the fourth time in 7 games, the Mets tied a game or took the lead in the 8th inning or later, this time with Mark Vientos hitting a game-time 2-run homer in the top of the 9th before failing in the bottom of the 9th on a Nick Castellanos game winner. Onsides, offsides, it's dangerous for the Mets to keep relying on these type of late-game heroics if they want to win the World Series.
Sure, onsides, but how else are they going to rely on things to win a World Series? Or even win this series? The bats have played well. I knew in game 1 they just needed to get to the bullpen, and once Wheeler came out, they would expose, the Phillies a little bit. And in game 2, they were up 3-0. They were down, then they came back, and all that. It was tremendous, but the Mets are not built to win a World Series this year. So you need magic, and that's something that we've seen teams have a magical ride all the way to the World Series, sometimes win it. And the Mets have certainly had that magic. So is it dangerous? Yes. Does it mean that they could come up with another way to win with the way that this team is constructed? No. But I'll answer the question with how it's asked. And yeah, of course it's dangerous. Man, I was moving off the couch yesterday in the 8th or 9th inning, fully on the floor. Oh, that was a rough one. Motions were shot yesterday. Thank God I had some Chinese food. Oh, those scallion pancakes really helped. And those soup dumplings, too, were really good. The General Tso's chicken helped get the pain away a little bit. Let's bounce back tomorrow and have the Mets go up 2-1.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. 2 minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. Forty-five seconds remaining. Thirty seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
To infinity and beyond.
He's live. He's nationwide. This is the Zach Gelb Show. Here's your host, Zach Gelb.
Alrighty, rocking and rolling, hour number 3 of our radio program. It is the Zach Gelb Show on the Infinity Sports Network. Let's take a deep dive into the NFC East. Giant fans, Sean Marash, Carlos with the K, congratulations. Yesterday was like your Super Bowl. I'll give credit to Daniel Jones. He played well. I'm happy that the Giants won because that distanced themselves a little bit from the Patriots as I'm looking at the number 1 overall pick because I want my team to have the number 1 overall pick and then trade the pick away and move a few spots down so you could get a king's ransom for someone that's going to fall in love with one of these quarterbacks when I don't think there's a quarterback in this year's draft that is a generational talent. So that's why I was happy with the Giants' performance yesterday. But you look at the other 3 teams in the NFC East. Give credit to the Cowboys. You know what? I will say this, and I know I'm usually tough. I'm fair, though, with the Cowboys. I'm accurate more times than not with the Cowboys. And I do call them the Drama Dallas choking Cowboys. That's a good win for the Cowboys last night. Because the Steelers and the Cowboys are very similar. You know neither of them are going to be going to a Super Bowl. You know neither of them, in all likelihood, are going to be in a championship game. They could just as easily miss the playoffs as they can make the playoffs, but they have like a limitation of just being good and maybe at most, if everything goes right, win a playoff game. So those 2 teams are very similar, where I think the Steelers are a better overall team, but the Cowboys are a team that they easily have the better quarterback. And even like McCarthy and Tomlin, right? They both won a Super Bowl. You know, McCarthy the last 3 years, 12 wins in Dallas. Tomlin's never been below 500, but hasn't won a playoff game since 2016. So they're both teams that are fine, good. but not expected to be great. But that's a game that Dallas had to win. Especially not an easy one when you got Micah Parsons out. And I feel terrible for TJ Watt, by the way. Like, we were talking about the MVP earlier. And I know a defensive player is not going to win it, but you can make a case that if the Steelers make the playoffs, or I don't think they'll win their division. I think it's going to be the Ravens. But if they win their division, that TJ Watt should be the MVP of the league. You know, right now, through what I've seen through the first 4 or 5 weeks, I don't think Derrick Henry's going to win the award. But Derrick Henry, to me, is the player that feels like he's the MVP of the league right now. But he won't win it because him and Lamar Jackson are going to split votes, and also he's a running back. And a running back hasn't won the MVP since 2012. So, I take a look right now, though, at the NFC East. Let me be positive. Let me be complimentary to the Cowboys. Heck of a win yesterday. I still don't believe in that football team. Yeah, I get it. You got to grind things out in the NFL. They grinded out that game up against the Steelers. You know, I actually feel bad for Cowboys fans today. How many people were actually watching that game last night? You know, I know it's Steelers. I know it's Cowboys. I'm sure the ratings will do great. But after having to watch football all day, having to wait almost 90 extra minutes because of that weather delay, how many people actually made it to the conclusion of that game? But hey, a win's a win. You give the Cowboys credit. But let's see what the Cowboys could do the following week up against the Lions. Like, I don't know what the spread is right now. And hey, if I like this, it may not work out because the way that I've been picking games to start off this season has just been abysmal. Absolutely abysmal. But right now, the Lions are a 3.5-point favorite against the Cowboys next week. Right now, I don't just like the Lions. I love the Lions. Because that's a typical Cowboys are at home, Lions motivation from losing that game to them last year off the penalty and all that stuff. Cowboys at home as of late has not been pretty. Right? The Ravens game, the Saints game, the Packers game in the playoffs. That feels like one week the Cowboys get a big win, and then the next week it's like, oh, this is who they are. An inconsistent football team. A team, I know there's not 500 anymore unless you tie, but like feels like a 500-ish football team. So, I look at the NFC East. The Giants, forget about them. I know they won yesterday. The Cowboys, I don't think they're making the playoffs this year. But it's a win like yesterday gives some optimism, gives some hope. Like, let's see where the Cowboys are. The next 5 games they have, tricky. Lions, then they have their bye week. They're at San Francisco. They're at Atlanta. They play the Eagles, and then they play the Texans. And then, the game after that, they're at the Commanders. That is a brutal 6-week stretch. 6 games in 7-week stretch. If they in that stretch can be 3-3, I may need to reevaluate my stance on the Cowboys are going to miss the playoffs. And that's just asking them to just be up and down, up and down. But if you go 3-3 against Detroit, San Francisco, Atlanta, Philadelphia, the Texans, and Washington, that feels like a win. If they can do better than 3-3, it will really change my stance on the Cowboys missing the playoffs. But I'm going to hold judgment, which is rare to do in sports talk radio, on changing my opinion on the Cowboys based off one game. Because the Cowboys this year, yeah, they blew out the Browns, but the Browns stink. They got blown out by the Saints. I don't love the Saints. They were getting blown out by the Ravens. The Ravens said, we'll let you back in the game. And they couldn't win the game. They barely beat the Giants. Only beat them by 5 points. If Daniel Jones could just hit a pat. If Daniel Jones did what he did up against the Seahawks, they would have lost that game to the Giants. And then give him credit, best win of the season, beating the Pittsburgh Steelers on their own turf. It wasn't a blowout like the Browns, but the Steelers are a solid football team. But that doesn't mean I'm immediately going to say, we got to change everything with the Dallas Cowboys. We now got to view the Cowboys as a team that's a contender this year. And I know there's not a lot of great teams in the NFL. And parity is here in the NFL, not that you associate parity with the Dallas Cowboys. But this is a year in the NFL where you kind of look at it, you go, ooh, been a lot of sloppy play. It's like in Billy Madison when the lunch lady comes out. She's like, Sloppy Joe's extra sloppy. This has been some extra sloppy play in the NFL this year, which it gives hope to those mid teams, and the Cowboys are a mid team. But I really do genuinely feel this way when we examine the NFC East. I think the NFC East right now is going to be won by either the Philadelphia Eagles or the Washington Commanders. The Eagles are 2-2. The Cowboys are 3-2. I know the Eagles are on a bye week. The Giants are 2-3. The Commanders are in first place right now at 4-1. If the Eagles, though, were to be afraid of one team in the NFC East, I think most people would say, oh, it's the Cowboys. I actually think the Eagles should fear the Commanders more. Because when you look at those three teams, forget about the Giants. The Cowboys can't show up in a big spot. The Eagles are completely just being held back because of a lack of team chemistry. And I don't trust this coach in Nick Sirianni. And I know that they had some injuries before the bye week, so guys will get healthier like Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown and so on and so on. But there's a lot of just like stupidity with the Eagles. They were 10-1 last year. And there was a lot of internal fighting in that locker room. And I think Sirianni is a doormat. And then what the heck is Darius Slay and C.J. Gardner-Johnson doing coming off another Eagles loss, going back to things that they did last week after the performance up against the Buccaneers going into the bye week? But I look at a team like the Commanders. On paper, are the Commanders better than the Cowboys? No. On paper, are the Commanders better than the Eagles? No. But the Commanders could be this year's version of last year's Houston Texans. An organization and a franchise that was a disgrace, that was an embarrassment, that could never get anything right. And then you hit on the quarterback, you have a new regime in, and everything just immediately takes off in 1 year. The outlook of the Commanders could change as long as Jaden Daniels continues to play this way. And what he's been able to do in the last 4 weeks to go on a 4-game win streak, and now they play the Ravens this weekend. And I'm not saying they're going to beat the Ravens, but you can't go into it and say, oh, the Commanders can't beat the Ravens. But when you have a quarterback like Jaden Daniels and what he's able to do through the air and also on the ground, it changes the entire outlook of the organization. And the Commanders right now have nothing to lose. Even at 4-1, there's no expectation for the Washington Commanders. People still think the Eagles will win this division. People will still think the Cowboys will win this division. But that's what makes the Commanders so dangerous. They have the quarterback, and there's no expectations. And if they continue on this hot start to the year, they could even run away with this division. Because right now, people are looking at the Cowboys, oh, nice win against Steelers, but can you replicate that against the Lions? People are looking at the Eagles, hey, they were 10-1 last year, had one win down the stretch, and then to start this season, there's problems. Is Sirianni even going to have a job from a few weeks from now? The Commanders are just getting praise. And when you get that praise, yes, complacency could find the way to sink in. But I actually think it empowers them even more to say, all right, we haven't been used to this, a lot of the players in the locker room. You know, this is a fun approach, it's a fun feel. Let's keep these good times going. And scheduling is everything in the NFL. I just told you about the Cowboys' next 6 games. Here are the next 4 games for the Commanders. Tough one against the Ravens. But after that, the Commanders play the Panthers, the Bears, and the Giants. Like, at worst on that stretch, where are they going? 2-2? And if they go 2-2, we're going to be sitting there after the first week of November with this football team being 6-3. How about that for mental math right there? That's big. Adding 2 wins to 4, and then you have 1 win and you had 2 more there. 6-3. I'm proud of myself there. There's that Temple University education. But I'm saying, like, if that team's at 6-3, it doesn't mean that they're a lock to go win the division. But does anyone really think that the Eagles are going to get their damn act together and the Cowboys are going to get their damn act together? And you know what? That's 2-2. I think that's me, like, just being, like, as negative as possible. There's a good chance they win 3 out of those 4 games. Like, lose to the Ravens. You should beat the Panthers. I know the Bears are getting better, but you should beat the Bears. And the Giants, You already beat them. And Daniels is much better now than he was in week 2, when it was just field goal after field goal for the Commanders. So if they could go 3-1 in their next 4, you're sitting there with a team that is 7-2. You're at 7-2, and you already look in this division with the Eagles already having 2 losses, and the Dallas Cowboys sitting there right now with a 3-2 record as well. Things could change very quickly. Very quickly. And how fun would that be for a fan base that had so much apathy because of that pig, Daniel Snyder, who just ruined that organization. And that fan base wanted no part of it because they were just, that stadium stinks. They literally crap on you in that stadium. Remember all those sewage pipes that would burst and crap on the fans? Disgusting. It's a mess to get to as well. You know, I've been there before. Leaving the game if you don't have a car, and trust me, if you do have a car, it sucks. Because, like, it's like a swamp out there. Like, you park on the grass, and, like, the grass just, like, sinks when you get out of the car. I've done it before. I've ruined shoes being there. And then also I've been there when I haven't been covering games as a fan, and I'm not even a Commanders fan. I've just been there like 2 or 3 times. And I covered 2 games there, and I went to 1 game as a fan. When I went to 1 game as a fan, like after the game, you have to walk like 3 miles to get to the public transportation to get home. It's crazy. So that stadium stinks. The owner was a joke, but now they have new hope with Josh Harris. It's nice that you bring in Adam Peters and Dan Quinn, who's a fine, competent football coach and is a culture guy. But you ultimately have to have the quarterback. And the Commanders right now look like they have the quarterback in Jaden Daniels. And just look at the Texans. Texans were like the punchline to every joke for a while. Then they got C.J. Stroud and immediately went from a laughingstock into winning that division last year. Why can't that be the Commanders this year? Why can't the Commanders with Jaden Daniels go on to have an all-time great rookie season, win Offensive Rookie of the Year, and win that division? Because quite frankly, right now, I trust the Commanders more than I trust the Cowboys. And because of the Eagles' lack of team chemistry and how they have just been a mess ever since starting 10-1 a year ago, and they've never been able to recapture that magic, I believe in the Commanders now more than the Eagles. Because the Eagles have expectations. The Cowboys have expectations. The Commanders don't have expectations. And the Commanders are able to play in a free way, and they are all getting a big energy kick from their quarterback in Jaden Daniels, who through the first 5 games of the season, he has changed the dreams and optimism of that organization. And has finally given Commanders fans something for the first time in a long time to tangibly hold on to and say, wow, we have a savior. Wow, we have some hope. And it's a really cool thing to see because that's a fan base. It's good that they could actually smile and enjoy going to that crappy stadium and enjoy supporting that football team. Because that used to be one of the more loyal fan bases in the league and one of the more proud, energetic fan bases in the league. But Daniel Snyder really did tear that organization down and tear that fan base down. So it's nice to see this football team start to have some excitement and come alive again. And I'm not saying that they can't win the NFC East this year. Quite frankly, right now, if you make me say who was going to win the NFC East, I'd say it's the Commanders. The Washington Commanders. Left hand up, we're Commanders. Love that on social media, too. It is the Zach Gelb Show on the Infinity Sports Network. Just do me a favor. Whoever that fan was a few years ago when they first made the name change, that went to the ticket office and said, we are the Commanders. Bum, ba-da-ba-ba-ba-bum. You may not want to do that. That could derail the whole season if we see that guy pop back up again. It is the Zach Gelb Show on the Infinity Sports Network. We will do No Huddle Offense next.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. 4 minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. Forty-five seconds remaining. Thirty seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
Touchdowns, sacks, upsets, and last-minute heroics. Another NFL Sunday is in the books, and we've got you covered with the biggest plays and sound bites from another wild week in the National Football League. It's time for No Huddle Offense on the Zach Gelb Show.
Alrighty, no huddle time right here on the Zach Gelb Show on the Infinity Sports Network. Last night, you did have the Cowboys on a delayed start on Sunday Night Football take care of business up against the Steelers by a final score of 20-17. Dak Prescott was 29 of 42 with 352 yards, and 2 passing touchdowns. He has averaged 311 passing yards in his last 4 games. Justin Fields, on the other hand, 131 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. George Pickens, who was telling everyone he was always open, well, really not the case. Only had 3 catches for 26 yards, had 0 TDs on the season, and TJ Watt had 1.5 sacks in the game. He's the second fastest ever player to reach 100 sacks. It has only taken him 109 games. He's reached 100 sacks in his career. Let's listen up, though, to Dak Prescott with the game-winning 4-yard touchdown pass to Jalen Tolbert with 20 seconds left in the game.
Prescott gets the snap, back to pass. Prescott looking, throws for the end zone. It's caught. Touchdown, Cowboys. Jalen Tolbert in the left corner of the end zone makes the catch. And the Cowboys have taken the lead with 20 seconds to go.
So the Cowboys beat the Steelers 20-17. Cowboys now 3-2. Steelers 3-2 as well. Stu, what's the topic here?
Are the Steelers wasting the career of TJ Watt?
Absolutely. He is the preeminent defensive player in the league. And the Pittsburgh Steelers, when TJ Watt has been on that team at this level of dominance, have not been able to find a good enough offense. Like, if you got on a seesaw and TJ Watt just stepped foot on the seesaw, he would fly all the way to the moon because this Steelers offense is just holding this team back. If they could just get an average, competent offense, efficient offense, not even great, man, with the way that defense is capable of playing, they would be a team that would not only just be a playoff team, but an actual threat. But they are wasting TJ Watt's career, and it's sad to see. Next game, Texans and Bills. This looked like it was going to be a blowout, and then the Bills found a way to tie up the game, make it 20-20, and with like 30 seconds left at their own 3, Sean McDermott's like, no, let's just throw the football. And the Texans had their timeouts. The Texans got the ball back because the Bills had to punt basically out of their own end zone, and they completed 1 pass with the second left, and they kicked a game-winning field goal by Ka'imi Fairbairn, and it was this 59-yard game-winning field goal. Let's listen up to how it sounded.
Ka'imi Fairbairn with a chance to give the Texans the victory. Here's the snap by Weeks. The spot. Here's the kick by Fairbairn. Has the distance, and it's good! Fairbairn wins it at the buzzer! The Texans beat the Bills! 59 yards for the dub on H-Town Day.
And that's a heck of a win for the Houston Texans because they didn't even play their best brands of football, and it was clearly better than the Buffalo Bills. And they were even able to overcome some silly mistakes by C.J. Stroud, who did have 331 yards in this game, a touchdown and a pick. Stephon Diggs gets his revenge, 6 catches for 82 yards. Nico Collins did leave the game hurt. He had that great touchdown catch, 70-something yards. It was 2 catches, 78 yards total, and a touchdown. That was just unbelievable. Perfect throw, perfect catch, and separation by Nico Collins. But for the Bills, man, they blew out the Jaguars, and ever since they got blown out by the Ravens, and they just had a coaching blunder on Sunday up against the Texans. I know the stats don't look great for Josh Allen, 9 of 30, 131 passing yards and a touchdown and 54 rushing yards, but he's the only reason they were in the game. James Cook also had 20 carries for 82 yards and a touchdown, and Keon Coleman had 1 catch, and it resulted in a 49-yard touchdown. So Bills lose to the Texans. Texans now 4-1, even though they haven't even played their best brand of football yet, and the Bills fall to 3-2. Final score, Texans 23, Bills 20. Stu, what's the topic?
Are the Texans the biggest threat to the Chiefs in the AFC?
So that's our poll question today, and the options are the Ravens, the Bills, and the Texans. I think it's actually the Baltimore Ravens, followed up by the Houston Texans, and then the Buffalo Bills. And right now, that's the way that our listening audience answers that question, too, as the Ravens are 51.9%, Texans 32.7%, and the Bills in at 15.4% when asked on my Twitter page at Zach Gelb, ZACHGELB, who has the best chance this year to prevent the Chiefs from representing the AFC in the Super Bowl. And I agree with our listening audience. I think it's Derrick Henry, Lamar Jackson, and the Baltimore Ravens. I don't know why I went all swami there. I used to go, and the Oakland Raiders. Next up, we go to Paycor Stadium, Cincinnati. The Bengals needed a win in the worst way. Joe Burrow was 30 of 39 for 392 yards, 5 passing touchdowns. Not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, but 5. And it still wasn't good enough. This Bengals defense is an absolute disgrace, other than when they play the Kansas City Chiefs. It's the only time that defense shows up, which is wild. And I mean wild to even say and also to see. Burrow was great. Also completed 77% of his passes. But the defense, Lamar Jackson had 4 touchdowns, 348 passing yards, 55 rushing yards. Derrick Henry, 92 rushing yards and a rushing touchdown. And Zay Flowers, 7 catches for 111 yards. Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, they finally both get going. 10 catches for 193 yards for Chase with 2 touchdowns. Higgins, 9 catches for 83 yards and 2 touchdowns. It's simply incredible how the Bengals lost this game with all that offensive production that we just read off to you. But the Ravens win 41-38 in overtime. Evan McPherson was lining up for a game-winning kick in overtime. It was a 53-yard attempt, and this is how it sounded, followed up by Justin Tucker walking it off.
With 4:31 left in overtime, a 53-yard field goal try for the Bengals. Snap is on target, kick is on the way. It is no good! No good! And sudden death continues in Cincinnati. Justin Tucker from 24 yards to win it. Tucker's kick is up. It is good! And the Ravens have won in overtime in Cincinnati. Overtime is over. The hay's in the barn. And the Ravens have defeated the Bengals in the wildest of ways.
Oh, my gosh. That is entertainment.
I still can't believe the Bengals lost that game. But that's who the Bengals are. That's who they are. I don't want to hear about what they've done 3 years ago, 2 years ago, all that stuff. They're now 1-4. 10 out of 10 cause of concern for the Cincinnati Bengals. And man, what a terrible snap that was. And then a bad hole, too. I couldn't even believe that McPherson still got the kick off. It wasn't close to being good. But how he still got that much power on the ball after it was just a terrible process leading to him kicking was really crazy. But that's just the Bengals in a nutshell this year. They could go have 392 passing yards and 5 passing touchdowns. It's not enough to win a game. That defense, PU, stinks. Stu, what's the topic?
All right, has Lamar Jackson passed Joe Burrow on the top 5 quarterback list?
So Lamar's a better regular season quarterback. He's the 2 league MVPs. Joe Burrow's been the better postseason quarterback. I don't look at yesterday, though, and say, oh, this means Lamar Jackson's better than Joe Burrow. It's close. It's very close. I think you could rank, obviously Mahomes has to be 1. And then when it gets to the next group, it's in no order. Burrow, Allen, and Lamar, you could order that any way that you want. But I actually still think that Burrow is slightly better than Lamar. We got to see Lamar have that moment in the postseason. If he does, then Joe Burrow can't claim that he's better than Lamar Jackson. But Burrow's had the postseason success. Lamar hasn't. So I will still put Burrow in front of Lamar. But it's getting close. Now you got to take care of business. Last year, Lamar in the postseason was able to take care of business. Let's see if this year's different. And yes, before people go, oh, Gelb, you just hate Lamar Jackson. I picked the Ravens to go to the Super Bowl this year. I said that Bill Polian was an idiot at the time when he was saying that Lamar needed to change positions when he was coming out of Louisville. I am not a Lamar hater. I'm a big fan of Lamar Jackson. But the regular season's one thing. You got to get the job done in the postseason. All right, next game. We go to London. Jets and the Vikings. And quite frankly, I'm surprised the Jets are letting Robert Saleh get back on the plane to come back with the team. This looked like the Vikings were going to blow out the Jets, and the Jets had an opportunity late. The Jets were driving, down 23-17, and Stephon Gilmore, the former Defensive Player of the Year, had this interception on Aaron Rodgers.
And the shotgun snap, number high. Rodgers lets it fly down the right boundary. One-on-one coverage. It's intercepted inside the 10. The Vikings take it away. Stephon Gilmore on his backside made the catch. An unbelievable interception from Minnesota.
And in that game, you had 3 interceptions for Aaron Rodgers, 29 of 54, 244 yards, 2 touchdowns, but those 3 picks, only 4.5 yards per attempt through the air. Garrett Wilson finally got going, 13 for 101 and a touchdown. Breece Hall, MIA again, 9 carries for 23 yards. Only has 197 rushing yards in 5 games. And Sam Darnold, he tried to get the game to his former team, 197 yards, had an interception. Justin Jefferson, 6 for 92. But at the end, Aaron Rodgers throws the big pick, as you just heard. Stu, you look at the Jets. Coach, problem. Quarterback, looking like he's 40. Offensive line, stinks. Breece Hall, missing in action. Defense, overrated, but I think your question has to do with the team that actually won. So let's hear what it is.
Yeah, are the Vikings really the best team in the NFC?
You could say they are. Record-wise, you could say that. I would still say it's the Detroit Lions. Niners, disappointing at 2-3. They blew that game yesterday to the Cardinals. Falcons, Bucks, I'm not really going to go best team in the NFC. Commanders, looking really damn good. Cowboys and Eagles, I'm just not buying into. I'm going to say it's still the Detroit Lions. I know they have one loss on the season. They're 3-1. They play coming up in 2 weeks. Their one loss was to a good Tampa Bay team. I'm still going to trust, though, the Lions a little bit more than the Minnesota Vikings, but it is a definitely fair question. It is a close answer, as you just heard. And finally, the Giants walk into the 12th man, and they take care of business up against the Seattle Seahawks. Let's hear Bryce Ford-Wheaton on the 60-yard block field goal that got returned for a touchdown. This won the Giants the game. Final score, Giants 29, Seahawks 20.
Myers, in his 10th year out of Marist, is set. Snap is good. Kick on its way, and it's blocked by the Giants. They got pressure up the middle, and they scoop it up. Running down the left side is Houston. He's to the 5, and he's in for the score and a touchdown. Bryce Ford-Wheaton.
And Daniel Jones is really good in this game. 257 yards, 2 touchdowns, no picks, 38 rushing yards. Any of that Daniel Jones last week up against the Cowboys. Tyrone Tracy Jr., 129 rushing yards. Darius Slayton, 8 catches for 122 yards and a touchdown. Remember, no Malik Neighbors or Devin Motor Singletary in this game for the Giants. Geno Smith, 285 yards through the air, a touchdown, 72 rushing yards. And Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet only combined for 30 rushing yards in this one. On the receiving end for the Seahawks, Tyler Lockett, 4 for 75. DK Metcalf, 4 for 55. Jackson Smith and Jigba, 4 for 31 and a touchdown. So a team win, a well-rounded win, all 3 phases of the game for the New York Football Giants, who are now 2-3, and the Seahawks, they fall to 3-2. Seattle got out to that 3-0 start. Last 2 weeks lost to the Lions, and then obviously the Giants, and they go on to play San Francisco coming up in 3 days from now on Thursday Night Football. Stu, what's the final topic?
What is your level of confidence that the Seahawks can win the NFC West?
I still think it will be the 49ers, but it may be the Niners at like 9-8 or maybe at best 10-7. You know, I know Arizona beat the Niners yesterday. I think that that Cardinals team is still inconsistent. The Rams, they're just totally getting decimated by injuries. They're 1-4. So I still think it will be the 49ers. And let's pump the brakes a little bit on the Seahawks. You know, they got out to a 3-0 start, beating the Broncos, the Patriots, and the Dolphins. None of those 3 teams are exactly all that great. The Dolphins didn't have their quarterback Tua. The Patriots offense stinks. And the Broncos, I know they're playing better, but let's not get delirious with the Denver Broncos yet. They just got blown out by the Lions. And then up against the Giants, you lose to them. And the Giants aren't exactly this great football team. Big game Thursday. And really, they got a rough stretch of games coming up. The Seahawks play the Niners, the Falcons, the Bills, the Rams, and the Niners just to get you, and then the Cardinals too, to get you to Thanksgiving. We'll learn a lot about Seattle. So that is No Huddle Offense for a Week 5 edition in the National Football League. A lot going on with this baseball game. Now, I'm not going to ruin Axe update here, but our guy, friend of show, or infringing on friend of show territory. He's joined us twice. The next time he joins us, he will be an immediate friend of show. But he's been on twice this season. Tarek Skubal is off to a great start in this one. But can we get the Tigers bats to get going, please? Nothing against Cleveland. You know, I just want this to be 1-1 in this series. When my teams aren't in it, I like to see these series just go the distance and be absolutely crazy. And how about this, Ack? I know you're a good baseball guy. Terry Francona.
Yeah.
Now becoming the manager of the Reds.
Shocking.
Yeah,
not so shocking that he's returning. It's where he's returning to.
To me, exactly. Like, I thought, okay, maybe he's done. You know, he didn't want that to be the end in Cleveland and all that stuff. Eventually, though, it's like, I know if you love something so much, you keep on doing it, but that guy's accomplished everything you can accomplish in this sport. He's only 65, but, like, if I'm him, I would just retire.
Well, I'll say this, though. He does go to a team with a lot of young talent. If they could stay healthy and you get Ellie De La Cruz to take the next step.
And you bring in a winning manager, that's a team that could turn around real quick.
They may need that J.D. Martinez type of veteran next year, but Matt McClain missed the whole season with a shoulder injury. Nick Lodolo, he's been hurt a lot. Hunter Green was hurt late in the year, but he had a very good season before that. A lot of talent on that team.
Where you at with the Mets? You working the Mets this week?
No.
No?
That could always change.
Okay.
To me, anything the Mets give you is gravy.
Yeah, I would agree. I would agree. But now in this series, I want them to win it.
Yes, I definitely. And who better to beat the Phillies than the Mets? That would be every New York fan's dream. But
especially with 07 and 08.
Yeah. I did not give them a good chance coming into this series. But
it's weird.
Again, look at how these games are won against bullpens.
I actually think going in, I thought the Mets were going to win this series and then losing the NLCS.
Okay.
I really do believe whoever wins tomorrow is going to win this series. Whoever takes Game 3, if the Mets take Game 3, I don't think they'll lose back-to-back games. I just don't. And the Phillies, hey, if they take this game, they did their business, and then they could go back to the bank, which, for a Game 5, if they lose Game 4, and I know last year, hey, that didn't work out all that well, but that's a very tough place to win.
And they'd have Wheeler on the mound for Game 5.
Yeah.
So
just hopefully get to the bullpen very quickly if the Mets have to face that.
There you go.
But yeah, this Mets team, they just have some magic to them. They do.
There definitely is, but that could also change very, very quickly.
Here's what I want to see. I was not all that impressed in the Game 1 performance by the Yankees, even though they won.
Mm-hmm.
The Yankees should beat the Royals. Even though I would rather see the Tigers there just because I love Screwball, the better ALCS would be Yankees and Guardians. And I think so many people nationally are sleeping on the Guardians. And then in the NL, Padres and Dodgers all tied up at 1. Disgraceful job by those Dodgers fans last night. Just ridiculous.
Yeah, I think there's so many places where you go now, and it
happens everywhere.
It's
like act like who throws a baseball at like a player?
No.
It's like who raised some of these people?
Yeah,
it's crazy.
Yep,
like a bunch of animals. Seriously,
that happens all too often.
It's wild. I know this can't happen. But I had no problem the player wanted to stand and beat the crap out of the fan that threw a baseball at him. You can't do that. You got to be the bigger man there. But, geez, that was wild.
But you also have to ensure their safety. And, I understand why Met fans threw batteries at Pete Rose after the fight against Buddy Harrelson. Not that I condone that, but that's a little different. This guy made a great catch. And, maybe there was some back and forth between them, but you can't be doing that. It's just
no. And here's the bottom line. That gives me a reason to want to see the Dodgers lose this series.
Oh, absolutely.
And it has nothing to do with the team. Ohtani's great. We all love Ohtani. But when the fans act like that, I hope the Padres kick their ass. That's what I hope.
They just might. You never know. A lot of star power in that lineup.
All righty. Well, come on back. We'll talk about the Cleveland Browns. Deshaun Watson. Very ugly. Let's get to the update, though. I'll tell you going around everything in the sports world, the Yak Man, Rich Ackerman.
Infinity Sports Network Sports Flash.
Well, since you brought it up, we will start with the Guardians and the Tigers Game 2 in Cleveland, which took the series opener. But Tarek Skubal on the mound today for Detroit, the stopper, and he has allowed just 1 hit through 5 1/3 innings and has struck out 8 so far, walked none. They are scoreless. Matthew Boyd matched him for the first 4 2/3 before giving way to the bullpen. The Guardians have given up 4 hits on the day, but Skubal has been dominant once again, keeping the Guardians' bats silent, although he just allowed the second hit of the day, which is going to go for an extra base hit. But still, the Guardians and Tigers are scoreless. Game 2 of the Division Series doubleheader tonight features the Yankees and the Royals in the Bronx, with Carlos Rodon starting against Cole Reagans. Texans wideout Nico Collins is week to week with a hamstring injury. And once again, Raiders head coach Antonio Pierce faced with a decision: stick with Gardner Minshew or switch to Aiden O'Connell. He said he has yet to decide on next week's starter. The Panthers have lost center Austin Corbett for the duration of the season with torn biceps. I'm Rich Ackerman.
This is the Infinity Sports Network. Follow us on Instagram. Our handle is Infinity Sports Network. That's Infinity Sports Network to follow us on Instagram.
You're in a 5-minute break. 4 minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. Five seconds remaining. Seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
Hey, this is Howie. And this is Nick from the Backstreet Boys. And you're listening to the Zach Gelb Show. And guess what? Zach is back. All right.
He's live. He's nationwide. This is the Zach Gelb Show.
Oh, my God, we're back again.
All right, it is the Zach Gelb Show on the Infinity Sports Network. You want to hear the dumb tweet of the week that I just got? So we were talking about quarterback rankings and how, like, once Mahomes is one, for 2, 3, and 4, you could kind of order Burrow, Allen, and Lamar any way you want. So from RD09716650, what is this, a social security number? And it's typical dumb tweet profile. Bunch of numbers and a egg-faced profile picture. Zach Gelb, how do you put that bum Burrow with Lamar and Josh and not include Hurts? Has Hurts not been as good, if not better, than Burrow over this same stretch? Oh, boy. Hurts had one great season. All right, one great season. I know Jalen Hurts has been in a Super Bowl. Yes, Joe Burrow has been in a Super Bowl. He's also in an additional AFC Championship game, too. So, I like Jalen Hurts, but Jalen Hurts has a lot to prove the rest of the season. So, you could pump the brakes there. Joe Burrow threw 5 touchdowns and they lost the game. And almost 400 passing yards. I don't think he's the one that we look to blame. So, that's just an awesome tweet. I'll get to the Ask the Pros question in a second. So, I actually have a question for you. Because you're like a big fantasy guy. I like you good with video games and fantasy. I know that.
Okay.
So I'm up in my matchup. The last 2 weeks, I've lost the last 2 weeks by a combined 2.5 points in fantasy.
Oh.
So I am up right now 123.7 to 122.32. The team I'm playing against has no one. I have my defense left, which is Kansas City's defense. I sick Kansas City's defense tonight. God forbid they get blown out and I lose.
Yeah, Derek Carr throws 5 touchdowns and they get you negative 4 points.
Derek Carr throwing 5 touchdowns.
I know.
But like you lose like 2 points. But the only other reason why I'm thinking of playing, what happens if there's one of those dreaded stack corrections?
Stack correction is the only, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Would that have been done already, a stack correction from Sunday by now, you would think, right? Probably.
Not always.
Yeah. So I'm going to sick Kansas City's defense. But if there's a damn stack correction.
Oh, it's going to be a bad.
Yahoo, you're getting a piece of my mind. I think this one's. Oh, no, sorry, Sleeper. Actually, I love Sleeper. So. Love Sleeper. So.
Sleeper's the best.
Yeah, they won't screw me over. They won't screw me over whatsoever.
Yahoo might.
Yeah, Yahoo might. I'm in like 7 different leagues. So I was like looking at which. I'm like, oh, no, that's my Sleeper one. I feel confident in that one. It's time to answer Ask the Pros question of the day, brought to you by O'Reilly Auto Parts. Let's go to Bella B in Calgary. Hi, Zach. Who's your doppelganger? Thanks, Bella B in Calgary. You can submit a question by tweeting at INSPortsCenter at Zach Gelb using the hashtag Ask the Pros. Think O'Reilly Auto Parts for all your car care needs. Get guaranteed low prices and excellent customer service from the professional parts people at O'Reilly Auto Parts. I don't think I have a doppelganger, but these are the 2 people that I've got before in my life. When I was younger, I had blonde hair. I was just born, and like the first 3-4 years of my life, I had blonde hair, and then eventually turned to brown. I also had like these really circular glasses. I would get Jonathan Lipnicki growing up as a kid. And then the other one that I got a few years ago, the only reason I remember this, you know that comedian Adam Devine? Or Devine, I forget if it's Devine or Devine. I had a listener once say that I look like him. And I responded saying I'd take that as a compliment. And then he responded to the tweet saying, Hot Boys Unite. So I guess those are the 2 people. I don't see it personally. But like when I was younger, I did look a little bit like Jonathan Lipnicki. That's what I got a lot. All right, let's wrap the show up with the Browns. I think it was Juju who said the Browns is the Browns. Jeez. The Browns is the Browns. Now, Stefanski has not been good this year, but he's been a 2-time Coach of the Year award winner in Cleveland. And he's taken that team to the playoffs twice. Last year, without Deshaun Watson, Cleveland looked like a really functional, good team. Now, with Deshaun Watson, they stink, but I know it's not all Deshaun Watson. But you kind of look at Watson and you just wonder what life is going to be like without him. Now, let's hear if the Browns will do that. Kevin Stefanski, after another putrid performance, will the Browns actually bench Deshaun Watson?
Yeah, we're not changing quarterbacks. We need to play better. I need to coach better. And that's really what it is.
They play Philadelphia, Cincinnati, and then the Ravens the next 3 weeks. The Bengals, though, have been so disappointing. The Eagles have not been hot. Nick Sirianni, you don't win that game up against the Browns, you're fired. That's what I'm starting to think, too. We're getting close. I'm not there yet just because of what the contract is. But John Fanta said this, and he's 100% right. You got to pay him the money anyway. And I think this team, not that I believe that Jameis Winston would last long as the quarterback, but I think you give him like a week or two of energy. Because Watson just stinks, man. From where he was in 2020, I know the off-the-field things are disgraceful. And that's a big reason why he wasn't on the field. But, geez, to see where he's at today on the field, he's terrible. He is absolutely terrible. So we're getting close, getting very close to potentially benching Deshaun Watson. But because of the contract, I don't think he can do it right now. All righty, that's the Zach Gelb Show on the Infinity Sports Network. We'll be back tomorrow at 3 p.m. Eastern, noon Pacific. Thanks so much for tuning in. You got a football game tonight. I think the Chiefs finally start to look better. I like Kansas City laying the 5 points. Give me Kansas City to beat the Saints. And Travis Kelce will finally get in the end zone. We out. Talk to you tomorrow, everybody. Bye-bye. Peace.